Hello, this is an after-action report of an Imperial diplomacy game. My name is Reallyuglybug, and I'm joined by Zac.
Hello. This is my third ever Imperial diplomacy game where I played Congo, which is the purple African regional country that you can see here. It's my
Yep.
first time playing anyone as an African regional, so very new to me learning more about Africa on the new map. This was the B1.2 version of the Imperial diplomacy map, so it's a bit different from some of the other versions you may have seen before. It's gone through some adjustments.
Yeah, quite a bit.
One of those major adjustments was to the area around Congo, because in the previous patch, Congo performed incredibly poorly. I think it was one of the worst performing nations. Basically, no one succeeded with it. And one of the major changes that has happened in this patch was, if you see the Dutch colony up to the top left of Congo here, one of their centers was removed. So previously they had three starting centers. Yeah, Sao Tome, I believe, was the third one.
Yeah.
But that has been moved to the Caribbean on this map, which was hopefully to make Congo a bit more playable. So that was part of why I was excited to
Oh,
try
yeah.
it out and see.
I forgot
Um,
about that.
yeah, I like the change a lot. I think,
I
well,
do
first of all,
too.
Congo definitely needed it, and I also think it's really interesting to add the Dutch to the Caribbean,
Yeah, I agree.
and it gives them a bit more relevancy to EF dynamics than just the Little America colony that seems to always get crushed.
Yeah, for sure. It's like, yeah,
Yeah,
I'm not,
I've
I'm
never
not.
seen it do well, but hopefully, I'm sure there's a game where it has. Um, So going into the game, I'm coming off of a good result from a previous Imperial Diplomacy game that I won't spoil because I think we'll probably cover that game at some point. But I'm a bit worried about being instantly coalitioned right off the bat. There's some overlap in players from that game. Both the Dutch player and the Mughal player I actually have played with previously as Dutch and Mughals. And the Dutch player was someone I had recently been in a death war with in a previous game.
Yeah,
So very much not something I'm looking forward to going into Congo. Hopefully, there's no bad blood continuing into this game. I'm certainly not trying to carry any of that over, and I'm hoping that they will do the same.
yeah. Grudges are not great.
Yeah. Um, Before press opened, I sort of had a starting idea of how I wanted to move my units in the first year. So if we look at, I guess I can throw it over to you. What sort of opening moves would you do as Congo?
Looking at this, you've not really got a lot of neighbors in quantity wise.
Mhm.
Like it's mainly the Dutch and Portugal. I think that it's kind of always been that way, just less so now.
Yeah,
Um, so I'm not really sure. Grabbing
it's definitely Dutch
neutrals.
and Portugal. We have the two African regionals, Abyssinia and Adron, up to my top right. But that's basically it. There's some other relevant nearby powers, like England is a bit relevant, and France is a bit relevant over in Madagascar. Ottomans is also a bit relevant, but those are more neighbor of my neighbor sort of categories as opposed to direct neighbors myself.
Something
Uh,
interesting is with Sao Tome not being part of the Dutch Empire right off the start, and just how the map is positioned, it will be neutral going into the second year.
yes, it is impossible for any country to take it in the first year, which is really interesting. Obviously, both the Dutch and Congo have the most interest in it,
Yeah,
but I really, and I guess we can start getting into opening ideas with the Dutch, but I really did not want the Dutch to take Sao Tome, less because I care about the dot and more because I don't want them to have a Dutch fleet in that position.
yeah. You want to be able to have control of your coast because St. Helena, as well as one of, I think, yeah, South Atlantic Ocean doesn't reach
Mhm.
anything else besides this Dutch fleet and your fleet. The only two fleets that can go to St. Helena at the
Yes,
start.
and with the way that Soyo is positioned, I would definitely want to walk into St. Helena in the first year as well. So yeah, I think we can start getting into some pre-game press ideas. When I was doing this game, we got access to our voids 24 hours before the game started, and this was probably the most I've ever used my void before a game started. So I had a lot of just like ideas I was like writing in terms of things I wanted to say to players as soon as the game started. And with the Dutch in particular, I prepared this like long opening message, which just talked a lot about my ideas about the relationship between Dutch and Congo and how excited I was about it, which is true. It's a big part of why I chose Congo so highly on this new map, was the idea of making a Dutch-Congo alliance actually feasible, and that meaning that Congo actually has more options. Not that you have to ally the Dutch, but the fact that it was now actually a possibility, whereas on previous versions of the map, it felt like those two countries basically had a death war over their African positions. Um, and so the reason I'm bringing this up is I do something really interesting here. Whereas as soon as press opens, like the minute it opens, I instantly message Dutch and I tag them. And the reason I do that is because I want to change or influence the way that they are going to do opening press with Portugal. Specifically, I want them to ask for Flores. So if you want to go over to Oceania for a moment.
Oh wow, you're
Yes, exactly. We're getting global with this.
you're asking for
Yeah, there's a lot of jokes about how I was playing Congo this first few years, but about like doing colonial-like press, and this is a big example of it. Just to generally introduce my philosophy here, the Dutch and Portugal are the two closest neighbors, like Bug mentioned, and the most important neighbors to Congo on the map. So I care a lot about Dutch and Portugal, and that means I care a lot about them everywhere on the map. And Oceania probably most of all because it's somewhat close to me, and it's also the the place where war between Dutch and Portugal would break out.
yeah
So if you look at um, the Dutch and Portugal fleets, they have a lot of options in terms of what neutrals they take in year one. But probably the biggest one, at least for the Dutch of interest, is they have this choice. They're always going to take Banjarmassen with these two fleets here. One of them is going to take Banjarmassen. But then they have a choice between Cotabato or they can go for Flores. And
or Danny
Cotabato is,
and
yeah, or Danny as well. Yeah. Um, depends on what Portugal wants. I assume Portugal just tends to take Donny these days because of the pre-core, but of course I'd also be happy with the Dutch taking Danny. Um, but Cotabatus tends to be a popular option, but obviously Spain wouldn't love that, and I would not love that either, because Cotabatus moving away from Portugal, it makes the possibility of a Dutch-Portugal war less likely and also weaker. And it also makes Spain a bit weaker because they have less easy access to neutrals around them. And I really want a strong Spain because my two neighbors are Dutch and Portugal, and Spain shares a lot of fronts with them while also not sharing any fronts with me. So if Spain becomes massive and eats a lot of Dutch and Portugal around the world, that's great for me because they're not going to be strong and they're not going to be putting builds in Africa, regardless of how big Spain gets. Um, so I really want some tensions to be developed here. I want Portugal to potentially open to Flores, or I want Dutch to open to Flores. I just don't want them to go for what seems somewhat standard nowadays of these very friendly openings to each other between Netherlands and Portugal. And
yeah
specifically something I say to the Dutch here, and this will be kind of consistent in a lot of my early press with both Portugal and the Dutch, is like I quote my past self of anti-Portuguese moves are pro-Congo moves to me. In other words, for a Dutch-Congo alliance to work, I need to see Dutch moving against Portugal. Because if I believe the Dutch-Portugal alliance is going to stay, then if you go back over to Africa, they're going to surround me on both sides and attack me, right? There's no way
yeah
for a long-term Dutch-Portugal-Congo three-way alliance to work out. So if you want to convince me that you're on my side and not on Portugal's side, I'm going to need to see anti-Portugal moves. And we're going to see the similar thing with Portugal, where, again, if I want to make a Portugal-Congo relationship work, I'm going to need to see Portugal going anti-Dutch. And this isn't, and especially from the early game, this isn't necessarily manipulation in terms of I want them to do poorly. I'm happy with either Portugal or Dutch being my chosen ally and doing well with me, but I don't want them to be working with each other. And that's
yeah
just like, if they want to work with me, they cannot be working with each other.
that's like because they have like over 50% of your border
Exactly.
combined
And it
together.
is impossible for me to win with both of them doing well. So
Yeah,
eventually I have to pick one or neither.
yeah. It's it's interesting.
Yes. So in terms of like the sort of things I'm saying to the Dutch, I'm talking about how much I value the relationship. I've seen so many Dutch-Congo wars lead to both losing, which is true. They just fight each other and then into oblivion, and nothing happens for either of them the entire game in Africa. I really value a good colonial ally, which is very true as well. As a regional, I want to be able to influence across the map. So if England is doing really well or something, as Congo, I can't do a whole lot about that, but the Dutch can do a whole lot about that. So I can potentially donate the Dutch builds or support them into centers and have them be my chosen colonial champion that will go influence things across the map for me. Of course, that also would potentially apply to Portugal. And there's pros and cons to colonial or regional allies for both regionals and colonials, but I find oftentimes there's a little bit of a gap of colonials wanting to work with colonials and regionals wanting to work with regionals just across most imperial diplomacy games. And I want to try to break down that barrier because you can work with either, and there's lots of benefits to working with a colonial as a regional that a lot of people don't appreciate.
Yeah, it's a good way to go about it because, as you said, you are kind of trapped to your local zone and don't have the connections.
Yes, I don't have the connections to influence the map, and also colonials know so much about what's going on. Like the Dutch and Portugal are the most informed powers on the map typically, in terms of how many people are talking to each phase and who's telling them important information, to guess at board dynamics. So just having a good relationship with someone like that can help you understand a lot of what's going on.
Yep.
Something else that's interesting about the new map, and that I also point out to the Dutch to help this relationship, is because the Dutch now only have 2 dots in Africa, Africa's not really a big stronghold of power for them anymore. Whereas by contrast, they have 3 dots in South America and this 1 dot in the Caribbean that's kind of linked up to the South America colony, which makes doing really well in South America much more important. And I'm trying to put this idea in their head of like, hey, you're going to want to invest in South America. You're not going to want to invest in Africa. You're going to have me as a friend in Africa, who's already a big regional ally. You're not going to need to invest a ton of builds here. You're going to do well. And this is a lot of people categorize colonies for these colonials into either growth colonies, which are ones where you're going to invest a ton of units and you're going to want to get a ton of builds, and just take over a large area and get a lot of points for your final score. Or do you remember the word bug? I'm kind of forgetting it, but like basically forget about it colonies, like ones where you don't have to invest a lot of units and they're very
I've
build positive.
I've never heard this term before.
Yeah, I can't remember what the word is, but basically the idea is getting a lot of build positive benefits out of a colony. So for example, this could be a colony where you control, say, 5 dots, but you only have 3 units,
Yeah,
right?
I get what you mean. Like
Yeah, yeah.
it's just
But just
storing supply centers for other fronts, pretty much.
Yes, exactly. So if you have a very safe front, like, and this is kind of, I think, exactly what would happen for the Dutch. So I think they'd control something like 5 centers very easily here with only like 3 units, was kind of like the idea. And that means that if you think about that, okay, they have 3 units in Africa and they're controlling 5 centers. Well, that means they functionally have 2 ghost units that they can put down anywhere on the map and help influence any front that they don't necessarily need a fund from those other fronts, which is very helpful. They're basically 2 additional units that they're not even justifying on another front, and that could totally turn the tides of a South America front or a Europe front or what have you. While also ensuring that they're never actually going to be a threat to me in the region if they only have 3 units here, and there's a limit to how many they could put down in builds. And it's a very good, stable alliance setup. It's just about I want this region to be the one that they aren't investing a ton into, and they're happy to have that sort of setup. While elsewhere they can invest in Oceania, South America, etc., to get a lot more of their final center count. Um,
I'm
and
just
that also
realizing.
allows me to take over a lot of Africa, and include that in my final center count without coming into conflict with them.
Yeah, I'm just now realizing that I don't think we really explained what imperial diplomacy is.
Oh, we
Uh,
didn't. Yeah. Welcome to Imperial Diplomacy. It's a 24 at this point player variant. If you look at the right hand side, you see all the many countries playing.
yeah, it's a bit larger than
And
classic diplomacy, which is what I
just a little bit.
imagine what most people are used to. Um, there are a few rules from classic diplomacy. Um, one of the easiest ones to spot right off the bat is these high C tiles. They have 5 circles in them, or some other amount of circles, and they act as one tile, but you could put multiple different units in the same tile. So it'll have the same adjacencies, just be able to put more units in it. Meaning you can't really block off this ocean path as easily as you could a normal C tile.
Mhm.
Um, and the second one is with the home supply centers. In classic diplomacy, you can only build in your starting supply centers. But in Imperial diplomacy, you may build in other supply centers that you own as long as you core them, which is a special move where you sit in place for 2 turns in a row, and then it will turn into a home supply center that you can build in.
Mhm.
And the final thing is the victory condition is a little bit different. It's not first to reach this
Half the map.
specific like solo threshold. You not control half the map. That'd be a little bit difficult.
Gosh.
It's to reach a VSCC, which is a Victory Supply Center count,
Mhm.
um, which is unique for each country over here. As you can see, there's the current supply center count and the victory count, and that is the VSCC. To get there, to win the game, you must have your VSCC in reached.
You must also control your capital.
Yes, that is true. Though not really too relevant in this game, I don't think. So I
No,
didn't pay attention to it, so it could be. Um, and you can technically win with more than one player as well.
yes.
To win a solo game by yourself, you have to be 25% of your victory
35.
condition. 30, is it
They
35
changed
in
it to
this?
35. Yeah.
Oh, they did. So it's 35. I'm wrong.
No, that's
30.
good. Yeah. On previous games that we played, it was 25.
Yes.
This one it's 35 in all games forward.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay. Yeah, 35 it is. So you have to be 35% your victory condition ahead of the person below you. As long as you're above 100%, then you could win. It's a little bit complicated, though. Once you understand it does sort of make sense.
Yeah, you don't have to worry too much about the math. Throughout the video, as we go to the different maps, the right-hand side that you see, that leaderboard, will be updating, and it will always be sorted from the first place to the last place.
Yes.
In terms of, and that's based on VSCC percentage, or like victory percentage. So you'll see like we have all these small countries that only start with 4 centers. If one of them gets up to say 20 centers, they'll be much closer to their 32 center victory condition than a colonial with like 32 centers, for example.
Yes. It just
So
makes
it's
it
not just
so
yeah.
like
So
the
it's sorted
smaller regional countries have a chance at winning compared to the ones that start with 16 supply centers.
exactly. And you'll also notice it scales such that it's actually easier for the bigger countries based on how much they need to multiply by. So the smallest countries like Congo, myself, need to go 8 times as much as you start on, whereas the biggest countries need to do 4 times as much.
Yeah, the reason for that though is because each of the colonies for the colonials kind of only have one spot at minimum and 3 at most usually.
Yeah, there's
So
a lot of
it
pros and
is
cons
worse
for
than
colonials.
regionals per area most of the time.
Yeah, there's a lot of pros and cons associated with being a regional or colonial, and it's hard to compare them apples to apples.
Yes, very much is. But that's why imperial diplomacy is so loved. It's because how the colonials interact with so many things, so many players.
Yes. And as you've already noticed with me interacting with people all around the board, it creates a very dynamic board where you're interacting with 24 different or
Yeah,
23 different people.
he's quite far away and already talking about stuff in
Oh, oh, that's not even the
Indonesia.
furthest person away I'm talking to in this phase, but we'll get to
Oh
that.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Apologies. I forgot about that. We can continue
Yep.
now.
Sorry, viewers. We should have started with explaining what was actually going on. Okay. So jumping back over to the Dutch, in terms of the stuff we're talking about here. So the things I want to see out of them in the first year is I am asking. Actually, I'm looking at this South America fleet very closely. So if you look at the
Oh
fleet
yes.
in Marstad, this looks far away, but it's actually very important to me. It can go 3 different places in the first year. So it can go to St. Helena, which is what I would absolutely like to avoid. It can go to Cape Co, down in South Africa, and it can go to Belém up in South America.
Okay.
That's the one I'd like to see the most, because that would require them to go to St. Marcos Bay in the spring. And if they go into St. Marcos Bay in the spring, I don't have to worry about St. Helena in the fall.
Yeah.
So that's the one I want the most, but I'm also just like, I can't like say you have to go to Belém. That would just be way too hard of an ask. But I do ask in my opening negotiations that they either take Cape Co or Belém and leave me St. Helena. And of course, the Dutch agrees. Even if they were going to move to St. Helena, it would be an expectation that they'd be stabbing me. I don't think they would ever say that they want St. Helena just because of how unreasonable that would be. Because if you look at my fleet in Soyo, it can basically only go to St. Helena. It can go to Benguela, but that would be very unusual for Kongo to do.
Yeah.
And would basically lock me out of getting another neutral because the army in Mapemba really wants to go to Benguela. Because if you look at its other options, it can technically go to Barrots, but Portugal gets Barrots in the spring, so you're just never going to get that. You can kind of get Burundi, but Burundi is going to be very highly contested by Ajuran in Portugal. So really, the army wants to be going to Benguela.
It's true.
Which means the fleet wants to go to St. Helena. And this is just a general thing with imperial diplomacy. A lot of the small countries, but even colonials, can have the opportunity to double or near double. And when we say double, we mean getting double the amount of your starting supply centers. So it is very possible for Congo to get +4, as it is for pretty much every other regional power. And most of the first year of imperial diplomacy is actually not spent attacking each other, because you'll notice there's so many neutrals in this map between the various powers that it's kind of hard to even attack other people for the most part. So most people are just figuring out how they can safely double, and it's negotiating because some people are going to end up not being able to. And so it's negotiating around the edges in terms of who's going to be that person. So for example, when we look at the Dutch with Belém and Cape Co, it's if the Dutch is going to St. Helena, they're saying, okay, Congo's not going to double. Whereas if the Dutch is going to Cape Co, they might start running into issues with France. And because if we move over to French Madagascar, France fleets are going to start wanting potentially Cape Co in the first year. Or if they can't take Cape Co, then they might want Mapondo, but then Portugal wants Mapondo. And eventually you get to a thing where, okay, not everyone can be happy, and someone's going to either get stabbed or someone's going to get negotiated out of accepting less dots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not a guaranteed double for every country.
No, certainly not. Some other things I ask for, I ask if the Dutch is willing to take Maldives as Ceylon. So if you look over at the Indian Ocean, this is again just, can you mess with Portugal here? Because Portugal wants Maldives, as opposed to going towards Andaman Islands, which is a bit more common and is more anti-Ayutthaya. We talk a little bit about Sao Tome as well with the Dutch. I'm happy for them to have it, actually, is what I tell them. That's maybe only partially true. I probably want it myself. But most importantly, I don't want them building a fleet to take it. And I think probably the most stable way, and what I pitch to the Dutch is, I'll take Sao Tome, but I'll trade you a neutral for it. So we'll both be happy, because you'll let me take St. Helena and Sao Tome. In that case, I'll trade you a neutral, and then we later settle on Mandara. Probably makes sense to be the trade target.
Yeah,
which
that
is
makes
a neutral
sense.
between us and pretty easy to exchange. Yeah. But the most important thing to me, more than anything else here, is I don't want the Dutch building any fleets. And I also don't want them building anything in Fernando Po. Which is a lot of asks, honestly. But at the same time, it's also pretty reasonable because there's not a whole lot Fernando Po can do besides attack me. But we're kind of jumping ahead to the first year is a little bit scripted in terms of like what people can do. So I'm already kind of asking and offering even before the spring moves are resolved about these things that'll happen in winter of like, hey,
Yeah.
and trying to see how willing people would be to do certain builds. Because for example, if I know that the Dutch is like, no, I have to build Fleet Fernando Po and Fleet Great Andra every year. That's just how Dutch plays. I'll just be like, great, we're going to war then. And I can kind of plan around that in terms of my press and my agreements with others. Something I'll do a lot in this game is leverage play. So for example, like how badly does the Dutch need to work with me here? Or how badly does Portugal need to work with me here? And if I know that the Dutch really needs to work with me, then I can push for more in terms of what I'm asking for them. And if I know the Dutch is very favorable to me, then that also means I don't have to be as worried about. Basically, if the Dutch is very friendly, I don't have to be worried about Portugal being potentially hostile, right? Because if Portugal starts hardballing me in terms of what they're negotiating me with, then I can just be like, okay, screw it, I'm killing Portugal and working with the Dutch, right? So the more confident I'm feeling about in my other relationships, the more I can push for in different relationships with other people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
And spoiler alert. Well, we'll get to it, I guess.
Ooh, almost think
But
something.
yeah, we'll get to it. But yeah, I'm very happy with how the early spring negotiations go.
Yeah.
Um,
That
the Dutch seems
was
agreeable to what I'm pitching. I pitched their move set, and I think they mostly agreed to it. I am asking for them to go a bit more aggressive against England here than they end up agreeing
yeah.
to.
I was about to ask,
Um,
are you asking them to go to Ogaduga here?
yeah, so
Or
the move set I pitched them is Great Ardra to Aja, Fernando Po to Nuri. Um,
see.
and the idea with that is ideally if they can get Ugadugo, that would be great. So get support in. Is that possible?
No, that's not possible.
Oh no, sorry, not get support in. It was have England move up into something like a Niani or a Mali, something like that.
See.
That would be ideal if England lets them. Or if you can't get Ugadugu, you can just take Benin and Hassa states. So Aja can go to Hassa states and Nuri can go to Benin. And the reason I want them to commit to Aja is because it kind of forces that sort of setup where if they want to take Benin and Hassa states, Nuri has to go to Benin and Aja has to go to Hassa states.
Yeah.
Whereas if they go to Oyo, for example, they can do something like Oyo to Benin and then Nuri to Mandara or something. Although even then, they're kind of just bouncing themselves out of a neutral. Most importantly, I do not want them opening to Loengo. I don't think they're going to. That would be very aggressive, but
Yeah.
regardless.
Are you moving to Lango?
We'll get to that. I mean, I guess I can answer that. So that's probably the most interesting thing. We can talk a little bit about my moves and my thoughts here. Before the game even started, I kind of thought most of my moves are already kind of forced in the first year. So for example, Soyo is going to Angola Basin. I don't think there's a better move here. It goes out to St. Helena, and that's just kind of what that fleet is going to do. Mpemba similarly, I think wants to go to Benguela, so it's going to Matamba and then to Benguela. Like that's just kind of what that army's going to do. And this is like something I would generally recommend against of having like very strong thoughts of what your units are going to do early on, especially before you talk to powers.
Yeah.
But I feel like Kongo is so limited in terms of what it can do in year one that you really don't have a lot of different options. Like yes, you have options to like attack for Burundi or something, but assuming everything is going well, and it was, I didn't see myself doing that. There just were very few conditions that would make me want to seriously deviate from these moves, which again is very rare. You should usually be very flexible, and I don't recommend not being flexible. But
Yeah. It is very set in stone. But if the
by the way, I ask you what you would
pre-planning,
do here. Yeah, if there was anything alternatives that you would consider. So in terms of
yeah, I think
yeah,
moves, I would move to Banda,
yes, which is what I do.
most likely, yeah. And
That was the
then
third move I saw is basically forced,
and
and
then
then yeah,
Mapanza to Mandara. Just
yes,
whether you go to Loango to try to snipe Fernando Poe or not.
yes. So that was basically it. I was like, I think these three moves, these three units besides Mabanta have basically very clear year one strategy. Mavanza has the first interesting choice of the
I'm
game,
so
which is
sorry.
oh, what's up?
Did you hear that? My alarm was going off and I couldn't find my phone.
Oh,
It's good. We're good. We can
we're
continue.
good. Um, all good. Yeah, what I was saying was Mavanza I felt like was the first interesting choice of the game. It could either go to Loengo or it could go to Sangha. And it's basically pro-Dutch, anti-Dutch, put very simply.
Simply? Yeah.
Either way, you probably want to send it to Mandara. So what would you
Yeah.
do here, and what would you be thinking about? Um,
Well, mainly what I would do after Mandara, because it's a huge tile, visually and with just how many connections it has.
Yeah.
And somebody will be in House of States, somebody will be in Darfur.
Yes.
You're in the middle. Like it's not great.
Yes. Correct.
So I'm not the biggest fan of Mandara as a supply center.
Interesting. So you don't even want to take it in the first year potentially. You just want to sit in.
Well,
We kind of have to, I guess.
if there's the option to snipe Fernando Poe, I would take it.
So would you move to Loengo to set up that option?
Yes, yes.
Is that so?
I
Yes, you
think
would.
so.
Okay.
I think so. And also just to
Interesting.
bounce the Dutch out in case they do go for it, I guess. Because
Yeah, very interesting. The way I saw this position, personally, I'm not big on year one stabs, although taking Fernando Po is a very good stab because it denies the core, which means that the Dutch can't do anything about it. Really, because they're only able to be building in Great Ardra, and they'll be really very much on the back foot after that. But no, I just want to take Mandara here, which you'd think that Sangha would be the clear choice. But then there's actually defensive problems with that. So what if they walk into Loango and you
yeah,
don't? There's actually a lot of issues there. So I end up wanting to move to Loango and very much second guessing it because I'm actually feeling very good about the Dutch. But even still, I want to do it, and I think I can talk my way out of it. Um, so I wrote this like little explanation of 4 different reasons why I chose to move to Lingo instead of Sangha, or actually only 3 different ones that ended up sending. Which 3 justifications for Lingo, and I also end up sending these to the Dutch after the phase goes through, is first, I think it very clearly goes for Mandara. I'm not going to ignore a guaranteed support into a neutral, because at this point, Pango would be in Banda, so it would literally just be a guaranteed neutral. For a chance at a dot plus a stab on a potential ally, I don't think the move into Fernando Po is even worth considering for me. And that's true. Obviously, that's hard to convey in diplomacy because they might just be thinking, okay, well, of course they're going to say that before stabbing. But it's interesting to hear you say that you would go for Fernando Po here because I would never even consider it. I think it's too risky that they bounce you out. And then you're in
yeah.
a pretty bad spot.
That is the issue is that they will have a unit next to it, so it might not be that great. I am now looking at this, and moving to Sangha could actually be good if you know that Azande is going to be empty.
Mm.
Because then you can move Banda to Azande, Sangha to Banda. Get those two
Correct.
done.
I just don't know how you could ever know that Azande is going to be empty.
I mean,
Maybe.
if you know that, I guess it depends on what these two
Or
do,
alternatively, if you
really.
get support from Audron, but that seems a very odd thing to happen in year one because Audron's probably focused south, um, just based on most Audrons. And going in on Abyssinia when Portugal exists seems a little bit weird. Like if you do have a Congo Audron alliance, you're probably not going to be looking north first. But it's definitely interesting to explore, and I really liked a lot of the interactions with this regional triple in terms of just looking at these like Azande, Burundi sort of options. I think are definitely ways to do a more innovative, unique Congo opening. But I do not do that. I do very basic stuff
Yeah.
because most of it ends up you have to accept that you're going to lose a build here, and I didn't. Yeah, there was nothing that seemed interesting enough that I would want to go down a build.
Yeah.
And I'm also feeling good about all my neighbors. I have a pretty decent relationship with Abyssinia, Ajuran, and Portugal, which I can talk a little bit more about. But yeah. Um,
Yeah, and
just to finish
with
off the justifications for Loango real quick before we move on to a different topic. The 2 other things were I said um, the second one was basically you never brought it up. I thought if you cared about it, you would have asked for a DMZ, which is kind of true, but also unfair. But to be fair, that is something I would always do if I was playing Dutch here. Like, if you ever don't want someone to move somewhere, and it's not like incredibly obvious that it's established, I guess you could say this is somewhat obvious. But especially in the first year, like I would always ask for an explicit DMZ just to make it clear, hey, I will not be happy if you move here. So they can't say, hey, you didn't mention it, so I thought you didn't care. Uh,
that's funny.
And then the third thing is a power told me that they were moving there. So I do add the caveat of like, I actually think that that was probably just a star conflict and it wasn't true. But like, even if it had a 10% chance of being true, it was worth bouncing you. because it's just going to walk into Mindara anyway.
Gotcha.
And once I'm in Mindara, it's like it never happened, right? Like there's no stab here. Like it would have just been the same as if I had moved into Singha.
Except you
And if you want
colored the
to,
tile.
I did color the tile, which means I can walk there in the future. That's how that works. um, and also, I mean, obviously, I'm not saying this to the Dutch, but I'm actually like, I think they even say at one point, like, I might want to cover it. And again, I respond with, yeah, I'm fine with you doing that. Like, you're welcome to do that. I, in fact, would love if they cover it because one of the things I don't want to see is a build in Fernando Po, and them covering Fernando Po means that they will not be building there, regardless of what they say.
Yeah.
So that was also one of the reasons I ended up walking into Loengo, because like, hopefully they do cover it, and I can just walk into Mindara. Okay. I've talked a lot about the Dutch in year one. Is there anything else? Yeah, let's move over to other people. Let's talk about Spain real quick, actually.
All right, Spain.
Yeah, I know, not one of my close neighbors.
How far away is that?
Mostly in Oceania, honestly, is what I'm looking at. I'm just talking to them about, hey, you're a natural ally to me. When I use the phrase natural ally, I mean someone who your interests are completely aligned. You never have a reason to go to war, and you often can't even really go to war. And you have mutual enemies. So in this case, again, if Spain does well, Portugal and the Dutch don't. So I'm talking to them. I'm starting to establish a relationship. I'm saying, hey, can you insist on Cotabato? Kind of just to double down on making sure this Flores thing happens. And also, they confirm that, yeah, they're taking Cotabato. So I'm like, great. My instant press about Flores is doing something. And it looks like the Dutch and Portugal are doing so well. They even say, like, yeah, I kind of want to attack both of them at some point and fight both of them. And I'm like, that also is great that they're against both of them. And Spain in general had been establishing sort of what we call, they were being called the hero of the regionals. So in most Imperial diplomacy games, group chats get made with like all the colonials or group chats with all the regionals. And there was a group chat made with all the regionals plus Spain, where Spain had claimed to be an American regional country. So that was the whole thing. And it does come up a lot, especially in these games where a lot of the colonials are very pro-colonial. The first colonials to sort of break away from that mold and like talk to regionals, give them information, work with them, tends to be very well regarded. So it looked like Spain was going to be the person who got that sort of title/status in this game, which I was very happy about.
Yeah, makes sense.
Because then I can encourage other regionals to be pro-Spain and anti-potentially Dutch or Portugal. Um, Cool. Moving over to Portugal. Portugal relationship also great start. One of my main things, I was focused very heavily on builds in year one, less so than moves. I really want Portugal to be building fleets almost pretty much exclusively. I don't ever want to see them build an army here in East Africa because armies can walk across the continent and attack me, and fleets can't nearly as easily.
Makes
The
sense.
basic year one neutrals I suggest that they take is Barotes, Zanzibar, and Mapondo. I don't want the one big thing moves wise is I don't want them to take both Burundi and Barotes with armies because I think that will set up a decently strong attack on me if they have an army in Burundi and an army in Barotes.
Yeah.
And so I'm talking a lot to them about how Zanzibar is actually better for them to take than Burundi. It's easier for them to defend, which is true. Like I'm giving them a bunch of true reasons for things that I want them to do for my own safety, but I also think is genuinely good for their position to take Zanzibar. They have this Karmos sea tile that makes it so much easier for them to defend against a potential stab, whereas Burundi, if I and Adron decides to stab for it, is just lost and there's nothing they can do about it. Something else that's a little bit interesting, I also had a pre-prepped message for them when the press opened that I sent, because they were basically the first two people I mentioned, messaged were Dutch and Portugal. And something I include in that message that I think is interesting is I haven't had a conversation with the Dutch yet, obviously because the phase had just begun, but I highly suspect that they will end up pushing false narratives about me getting Portugal, because getting Portugal to attack Congo really accelerates and empowers the Dutch in Africa. So I treat anything that they say negatively about me with several grains of salt. And I expect to inevitably end up in a death war with the Dutch at some point, given how most Imperial diplomacy games have gone so far. This is obviously partially true. Again, a lot of games have gone with Congo-Dutch wars, but with the new map changes, I think that's much more preventable. And also, it's covering myself a bit for this Flores push in case the Dutch immediately go and tattle to Portugal about me doing this. I could just be like, yeah, the game just started. I haven't talked to them, obviously, and I am. But I suspect they will lie about me because they have heavy incentive to.
That is wonderful.
Yeah.
I like it so far. The
Yeah.
You do kind of have to do weird negotiations like that when like
Yeah.
70% of your border is with two countries.
Yeah. And a lot of it's interesting. It's not necessarily like a lot of it's not necessarily lies because it's like I actually want to have as good of a relationship as possible with both the Dutch and Portugal independently right now. Because if one of them stabs me, my position gets a lot worse, and if both of them stab me, my position's terrible, and I'm going to lose.
Yeah.
But I want to work with both of them while also making sure that they're not working with each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
And unfortunately, yeah, that means I'm kind of forced not to be entirely pro one everywhere because that would just be a problem, and it would forgo my relationship with the other, and it would give that one colonial all the leverage to choose who they wanted to work with between me or the other colonial. In terms of the other regionals, we have Ajuran. So this is the blue one up here. I talk about how I think they're also a strong natural ally to me in terms of the African countries. I think that's very true because they can be a navally focused regional. Obviously, they're very connected to these sea tiles. And if you just like look at what it looks like for various powers to achieve their victory conditions, it's much easier to see like a Congo Ajuran impunity than it is to see something like a Congo Abyssinia impunity, just because both Abyssinia and Congo are very land-based powers, whereas Ajuran has all this potential for naval exploration and expansion away from Congo. So generally the balancing act that's difficult with these regional alliances is regionals are great to work with because they're so much stronger in your home region, right? So Adran is very strong in Africa, but the problem is they're also going to want a lot of dots close to you because they can't get dots at other places in the map. Versus colonials where they can get dots at other places in the map, but they're not going to have the same like immediate early game strength.
Yeah.
And you probably don't want colonials investing heavily in your area anyway. In terms of that, because I want Audron to work with me and I want them to not come into conflict with me, I want them to build a lot of fleets. So I'm requesting in year one, I'm requesting that they build at least 3 of their 4 builds as fleets, or if they only get 3 builds, 2 of 3 as fleets. And I'm pitching this as like, this would make me happy, but it would also make Abyssinia happy. I'm pitching a African regional triple, at least to start off, if they are interested in it. And both Adron and Abyssinia say that they're interested. So we end up forming a triple group chat and we start doing African regional triple talks. I wasn't like hard pushing for it in the sense that like I thought it would stay together forever. And I think even in my early conversations, I'm not even talking about it. I'm not talking about it tearing apart, but I'm just also like, hey, like we know that we probably have to get rid of Abyssinia eventually or something. I'm not against doing that, but at least for the early game, so we can take out Portugal together. And Adron seems very happy, very much on board, and very anti-Portugal, which makes sense and seems very typical of a lot of the ways that a lot of Adron players have ended up playing on these versions of the map. In terms of other requests for non-winter stuff, I'm asking them to not send both of their armies southward to Binyoro and Burundi. So I don't want to see the 2 armies go south. I want to see Marig go north some way, or get convoyed into Sakalava, or get convoyed into Mara. There's a lot of interesting convoy options. If they don't want to double, then they forego that for good positioning that I think are pretty strong. But the Adron player wants to double, so I'm like, cool, fine with that. Just make sure Marig is going to Warsangali then. So that, yeah, or something like that. Or even, they could even do Baido to Zanzibar and Marig to Bunyoro would also be fine with me. I just don't want them to be in Bunyoro and Burundi. And ideally, I want them to go take Warsangali.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Just because, again, there's no real attacks, or there can be, but there's very few, especially for Congo here. I'm not really worried about a year 1 attack, but I am worried about a situation where Adron has, or like, say, like Adron army in Bunyoro and Burundi, and Portugal has an army in Barotse. Now it looks like a bit dangerous to me that they have a very natural year 2 spring go after Congo together.
Yeah.
So trying to make it so that their most natural option is to work with me as opposed to fighting me, and building fleets and not sending armies in my direction make it pretty hard to go against me. At least without some major subterfuge or change in direction later.
Yeah.
something else interesting I do that I'm actually adopting from one of my spectators, or something I saw in another game, is late in the phase. It's interesting because this is based on something that was true in another game, but it wasn't necessarily true in my game. But late in the phase, I tell Audron that Ottoman told me that they intend to take Timbuktu, but not push further into West Africa. So if you look up at Ottoman's position and where Timbuktu is, basically saying that they're not investing heavily in West Africa. And not saying directly that Ottomans has told me that they're stabbing Abyssinia, but to imply that Ottomans are stabbing Abyssinia, at least if not immediately, but in year 2. And the hopes is that this would inspire either Ottomans and Abyssinia war, because Adran might take that news and make some assumptions and go to Abyssinia and leak it. And now Abyssinia will be annoyed at Ottomans. Or Adran will go to Ottomans and decide to attack Abyssinia together. That's probably less ideal, but either way, I'm kind of happy just to see, because if either of those scenarios are happening, they're not, neither Abyssinia or Adran are focused on me immediately.
Yeah. Because you do just want them not to work together fully.
Yes. And the reason I really like that too is because it's, I tend to avoid lying significantly a lot in Imperial diplomacy, but also especially if I am going to lie or say something that's like a half-truth, I'm trying to say something that could never be disproven or verifiably shown that I said a lie. So for example, in this case, it's like, Ottomans is not interested in pushing heavily into West Africa. Like, okay, Ottomans definitely could have told that to me. Like, that doesn't necessarily, I'm not going so far as to say Ottoman told me that they're stabbing Abyssinia, right? Which is a much more disprovable thing.
Right.
And could be more likely to cause Adran to go to Ottomans and be like, hey, did you actually say this to Kongo? And then Ottomans is mad at me or what have you. In terms of Abyssinia, honestly, I probably overly orchestrated when it comes to this Ottomans Abyssinia thing, because Abyssinia already seemed very interested in going north. They liked the triple idea. There was already a lot of early tensions between Abyssinia and Ottomans, which is fairly common in a lot of these Imperial diplomacy games, because they're so right on top of each other.
This area looks like a mess to work around.
Yes. But the basic pitch/idea for the triple was Abyssinia will push north into Ottomans, Adran will push south into Madagascar, and I will push west into the Dutch, in terms of the long-term plans.
Yeah, that seems like a pretty solid plan.
Mm-hmm.
Even if wherever you're planning going with these two colonials fails,
Yep.
you do have this regional triple to fall back on.
Yeah, and I'm feeling really good about basically all 4 of my neighbors at this point. Pretty happy with the early game. France is a bit quiet, not really having as much conversation with them as I would like. They're generally known to be a bit of an inactive player, and if we start talking like wide board rumors, rumors of France getting coalitioned by all 4 other colonials were going on at this point. There was the standard sort of anti-colonial tribalism. We heard that there was going to be a 4-way or a 5-way colonial alliance. Something that's relevant to this in terms of international news is a 3-way important information group chat for information sharing was formed between, can you guess which countries?
I can because I saw it. That was an
Yes,
entertaining
you can.
chat.
Do you want to share the 3 countries in the international information sharing group chat?
It was Congo,
Of course.
Austria,
Mm-hmm.
and Ching.
Mm-hmm.
Those
If
is
you know me
wonderful.
and my Imperial Diplomacy gameplay, I love these cross-map regional conversations. Basically, every one of the Imperial Diplomacy games I've played so far, I've had something similar to this, of like an information network or an alliance that's a cross-map that I stay pretty faithful to and actually share some important information. And in exchange, it tends to reward me with like important information in exchange, and it's helpful. I know a lot more about Asia than I otherwise would. I know a lot about Europe. Austria is a really good information source to have because I want to know a lot about what's going on with the colonials. Yeah, and I'm learning a lot about things from different perspectives that people are telling them that people would also never expect me to know about, right?
Yeah.
So it's like if Portugal's going to go tell a lie to Qing about their relationship with the Dutch or something, they're not going to expect that to come back to me, but it could because I'm having these long distance relationships.
In my first Imperial diplomacy game, I played Ayutthaya, and one of my best alliances that I had was with Sweden.
Yes.
And it got me into some deep shit because I was associated with Sweden. It did
That's
not work out
hilarious.
too great.
Yeah, stories like that are one of the main reasons I love Imperial diplomacy.
Ooh,
Um,
that was funny.
but yeah, so I've also developed a good relationship and a lot of trust with both of them. Probably naively so. I trust very heavily into people that like tell me the truth a lot or tell me stuff that's helpful. I like good communicators, and both of these players were very strong communicators with me. Um, and also it very much helped with like verifying rumors. So if one of us heard a rumor about like a particular colonial alliance, we could verify it. And we can also ask around things for each other without, again, people. If I'm asking Austria to do me a favor and check some piece of information, like, hey, Portugal, are you working with France on this, like, to take this center or whatever? Like, they're not. Portugal's never going to think Congo is behind Austria asking that question. So there's a lot of really good information. Just like one of the most powerful things you can use is like just like asking people questions, like talking with people, as simple as it sounds. And this is like one of those like I'm doing colonial levels press as a regional and being able to learn and like influence the board in way more ways than you'd expect, um, despite my very small unit count and limitation to Africa. Um, yeah, and also so we can use it to find out true information, or if we want to spread a particular source of information, because we're three different sources in very different press circles. So if the three of us decide to spread a particular rumor, it's going to look like it's coming from everywhere on the board, and it's going to be very hard to trace back to, oh yeah, it was Austria, Congo, and Qing that started this rumor. Um,
Yeah, the only way
because you'd
that
expect
group
it to
would
be,
be
yeah,
found out is if one of the people inside reveal that they're a part of
exactly.
it.
Yeah, and as far as I know, it was never really revealed until like way later into the game. And I think it would be very if it had been revealed, it would be very easy to just immediately divest from it and lose a lot of trust, and that would just be bad for all three of us. So I think we're heavily incentivized not to leak that sort of thing. It is true that
Yeah,
a lot of these group chats could just blow up or get destroyed, and that's also why I wouldn't really do it with more than 3 or so people in one group chat about something like this,
yeah,
because it's too likely to get leaked or found out or destroyed. And it would just be bad for all three of our games, and I'm really happy that it managed to stay the way it was and actually be a useful resource for all three of us throughout the game.
yeah.
Other things, I'm just having good friendly opening press with a lot of people. England is pretty chatty and we get along well. They also seem like a strong player and they're getting along with a lot of people, so I'm actually a little bit wary about them. Aymara, Guarani, and Mapuche, the three South American regionals, are all fairly active and friendly and all also seem like strong players. Mapuche especially is very cross-map press active. Before spring moves have even resolved, they're involved in Mughal Hyderabad conversations. Um,
Oh wow.
like they were being told things by England and Portugal and Mughals and Safavids about Hyderabad, which is crazy. I also had a very good cross-map relationships with Safavids, Ming, and Tokugawa, and I was very happy with all three of them. In particular, Ming and Tokugawa, we talked a lot about the nearby colonials and their thoughts on them and stuff like that. Uh, yeah, so I'm very happy with like half the board, which is a great spot to be, and
Especially
even all four of
considering
my neighbors. Yeah.
moves haven't even started yet.
Yes. So I think we're finally ready. And so yeah, I'm just doing a lot of press with regionals about how to further increase tensions between Dutch and Portugal. Um, to an extent, I think the Dutch and Portugal are catching on that a lot of regionals are manufacturing these sort of tensions and trying to push them against each other. But to a certain extent, there's nothing they can do about it, right? Like because yes, half the board is pushing them to fight, but also if half the board is pushing them to fight, that means a lot of people want them to fight and are going to want to work with them if they do fight, which gives them a lot of incentivized to stab each other, even if they know it's something that the regionals are manufacturing. We're still offering very good deals to the first person who stabs, for example. Like the Dutch is heavily incentivized to stab Portugal if they think that a bunch of regionals want them to stab Portugal and are willing to work with them and offer them things if they stab Portugal and also willing to attack Portugal with them. Uh, and similarly, if the Dutch knows that Portugal is hearing similar offers, then Portugal might be tempted to go in on the Dutch, and that leads to a cycle of distrust. So even if they know it's manufactured and something that other people are causing and not something that they intentionally were the ones who were starting, it still can spiral into distrust and fighting each other, which is kind of what we're hoping, is that these incentives to stab become a real stab at some point.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty happy with the rising tensions and the fact that Flores seems to be being taken or something like that. Um,
It's still funny to me that that was your Was that actually your first press message? Was
Yeah,
about
my first press
Flores?
message to the Dutch. And I think literally the very first sentence is, "Hey, please don't send any opening press to Portugal. This is important. I want you in your opening press message to Portugal to ask for Flores." Yeah, and then have like a
That's
paragraph
great.
following that, something like that. Yeah.
That's great.
Mhm.
Do we want to move to the move, like to see
Yeah,
the
we can finally get to the
moves?
moves.
Yeah, I wanna get to the fun tactics here.
Yeah.
Alrighty,
So I do what I said I was doing. Um,
you do go to Luanga,
I do go to Lango.
and they do not move to Aja. I noticed they bounced and
No, and they
bullets.
told. I don't think this was a stab. I think I knew what the Dutch was doing. That was just what I sent them in my opening press, was asking them to move to Aja. Instead, they agreed to announce bounce, and that's fine with me.
Yeah, doesn't look too terrible for you. Let's see. What other interesting things? Ooh, you said you did not want Portugal to be in
Um,
Burundian Brutes.
yeah, now it's looking like they're going to Burundi and Brits. Something else that I'm unhappy about here. Adron is moving 2 armies south.
And
And
the
I
Dutch is moving into
believe
South Atlantic Ocean.
yes, although the Dutch again, I think, told me about the South Atlantic Ocean. They said they're going to Cape Co. I'm still not happy about it because they could just end up bouncing me from St. Helena because, of course, they would always tell me that they're moving to Cape Co. But yeah,
It's not as perfect as it could be.
it's also, well, it is a pretty significant thing because I just walked into Loango. So, and this is one of the reasons why walking to Loango might be kind of dumb here is I'm really asking the Dutch to bounce me out of St. Helena. Like I just
Yeah.
did what some people would interpret as a spring stab on the Dutch. Um, and yeah, they might want to retaliate by bouncing me out of St. Helena. So I'm doing a lot of press this phase with the Dutch to get them to go to Cape Co. And I'm doing a lot of press with France because France also wants to take Cape Co here, and that's a problem. So I'm doing a lot of press with France, asking France to bounce Portugal out of Mapondo instead of the Dutch out of Cape Co, with the hope that, first of all, that if France actually does that, then cool, Portugal's weekend. But like that's not really so much what I'm going for. But it's that the Dutch will go to Cape Co because they know that France is not bouncing it. So I really want France to say, okay, I'm going to bounce Mapondo. Oh, and sorry, and not just that, but I want the Dutch to know and hear about from France that I'm arguing so hard on their behalf, right? Because if I'm sending all these messages to France like, hey, please go to Mapondo, please let the Dutch into Cape Co. Here's a bunch of reasons why it's good for both you and the Dutch, and well, I'm not gonna talk about me, but yeah, also me. Um, um, but if even if France isn't convinced, France might still go to the Dutch and say, sorry, Dutch might still go to France and be like, hey, can you not bounce Cape Co? And like, what has Congo been saying about it or something? And this is often why, like, again, I tend to play like a very like honest play style and like very much advocate for certain things where it's like I want people to hear about the things I'm saying about them, which is kind of contrary to how a lot of people play diplomacy, where it's like I'm going to make all these lies about my ally and like get them to be undermined, and like I don't want them to find out. No, I want to say good things about my allies to other players, and then hope that that trickles back to them in this case. So I'm trying to do all this pro-Dutch stuff with France in hopes that not only is France convinced, but also the Dutch knows I'm advocating really hard that they can get Cape Co. And the hopes is they won't want to stab me for St. Helena anyways because they'll see me as this valuable ally that's going to argue on their behalf.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Mhm. Yeah, where do you want to look around the board? There's a lot of things to look at. We do
Yeah.
see Abyssinia and Ottoman stab each other. Oh, we can look at, yeah, let's look at South America.
I sorry, my in my peripheral I noticed that like this no way no it can be taken. Okay, I was like Licitania is being ignored, but it can
Yeah, the
be
main
taken.
thing here is Aymara stabbing Spain. I think that's like the.
It's not surprising though. I feel like that's I feel like I've seen that in every game that I've played of Empty.
It's not uncommon for sure. Um, but it does seem that Aymara is going to focus otherwise.
Yeah. Seems
Otherwise,
like
not a whole lot of stabs happening here.
seems like tensions between Portugal and Guarani aren't great.
Possibly, yeah. Although that also seems somewhat of an arranged bounce. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
I mean, there's
perhaps.
no way. Yeah, but it's
But
also not a great arranged bounce for either room.
Mapuche's happy, though, that's for sure.
Yep.
Oh,
Yeah,
there we
very
go.
happy to see that one. I believe the negotiations ended with Dutch agreeing to take Danny and Portugal taking Forest, which I'm very happy to see, because that sets them both up to have attacks on each other for the future.
Yeah. Spain didn't go for Cotabachi.
No, Spain.
Wait, Italia has
Spain
that
did.
guaranteed.
Yeah, although Italy also has Sambas, which I think is what they're always going to take. I don't know.
Hmm, I might take. If I was Italia here, I'd take Cotabachi any day. Sambas always puts you in a war with the Dutch, I feel.
Yeah, you're right. I'd probably take Cotabato too, but yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, Spain.
Especially considering that they moved to South China Sea.
Yeah, I won't talk about this in detail, but like if you look over at America and Mexico region for Spain, this cued me into
Oh, oh,
yeah.
what is everything holding?
Yeah, exactly. There's no good reason. I think it was Spain's first game of diplomacy or something like that. So,
Oh, we missed the
yeah,
orders.
and it's very difficult to play a colonial for your first game. There's a lot
Yeah,
of press, more than basically
yeah.
any other diplomacy variant to play a colonial. It's a ton of press and it's a ton of tactics.
I won't
I
get
wouldn't
into.
recommend it. It can be fun, but yeah, you're gonna
Okay,
have some
I
issues
don't want to get
and
into too many details. Zach and I did play
colonial
a
game.
colonial,
Mhm.
um, but as a duo, we were both playing the same country.
A duo, and we both are somewhat experienced players,
But
and
it
yeah.
took so much time from both of us. We spent so much time on this game, on that
Yeah.
game. It was a huge time sink.
Yes.
So I can't imagine doing it solo. I
Yeah.
much less this being
Um,
your first game.
but yeah, they're not gonna have good times ahead with Aymara stabbing, and if we see the North American regional also stabbing.
Yeah, Mara or Ute.
Yeah,
Ute.
it's also yeah. And also just like not super strong tactics either. So that was very sad for me to see in general, just to see like, oh, Spain's not gonna have a good game. That sucks. Because I wanted to see Spain doing really well here. And I
Yeah,
think positionally, like in terms of like where the board was talking, like I think they successfully got the hero of the regional status. I think it was more just like a tactics and specific agreements with nearby regionals, which are obviously really hard to do very effectively on your first game. Um,
yeah. But it does
um,
seem like things went pretty smoothly,
yeah, pretty smoothly. Most
relatively.
things went as I expected. It's not like an ideal year one, but it's not a terrible one either. I'm not happy to see the Audron move two armies in my direction. Um, I am happy to
Yeah, I don't know if
see.
I'd count, but that was good to Zam so far, so I think it's okay.
Oh, it could go to Burundy. And they
Technically,
have some
yeah.
very aggressive options here with Portugal. So Mutapa to Barotes, Bemba to Lundaluba, Audron walks into Burundi. Like, yikes, right? There's some really good Audron Portugal attack Congo things here.
Yeah. Yeah. Hmm.
They have four armies on me, like immediately. So not thrilled, but like I think most of it was to expectations. So I do some negotiations with Audron, and Audron wants to bounce Portugal out of Burundi here. So I'm like, great, go for it. Yeah, that's amazing. Sure, do that. So they're going to support themselves into Burundi while offering it to Portugal. And actually, I think when I saw these moves go through, I think I expected that. Actually, I'm trying to remember. Um, or at least as part of like, I was also trying to encourage Portugal Audron tensions, of course, because I need them to fight each other and not work against me. So I think one of the things I was talking about was like, oh, Audron did this move set because they want to support themselves into Burundi and bounce you out. They wouldn't have moved to Kismayo otherwise, or something like that. I don't remember what exactly, but I was also alerting Portugal to the fact that like Audron's probably going to stab you here,
Yeah.
and then Audron I think ends up following up and doing it. Um, Other notable things, yeah, there's this war between Ottomans and Abyssinia. Ottomans actually has a really effective stab here that is really interesting, that I didn't see
Oh
coming.
yeah. It's wow. That's guaranteed actually.
Yep.
Michele.
Yes. And they can even convoy. And
Oh, they can.
yes, it's pretty brutal.
Well, the
It's very
convoy's not
impressive, honestly.
guaranteed.
They can support the convoy.
Technically, it's not guaranteed. You could tap Falcon.
Oh, sure. If you're crazy, it's not guaranteed correct.
If
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
insane, you could counter it.
And even then, you also don't take a neutral with either of those two units, so it's not like it's a great
Yeah.
position for you. I actually really like this for the Ottomans. I think more Ottomans should do it. Yes, they're not taking neutrals with Tripoli, but they're still going to get a bunch of neutrals in other places because they're such a big country, and they can then use that to put 2 builds into Cairo and Mecca. So assuming they're confident in their other fronts, this lets them crush Abyssinia really early, and that's just a really strong, good
It
place
only
to be.
works as well if Dibri Burhan is moving down as well. Because if it moves to Ausa here, then
Yeah,
Akele can
you
be
can probably
covered.
figure out in press if it's doing that though, and I think moving to Ausa is pretty unusual.
Hmm. Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I don't really like this Tripoli move, to be honest. I feel like West Africa is too lucrative.
Yeah, that is the one counterpoint of like, yeah, you could grab Timbuktu, but I don't think anything's stopping you from going into West Africa later. Like, there's going to be colonial
Uh,
messing around
you'll
for a
just
few
have
years
to
there.
figure. You'll have to really work your way in there with press is the issue, instead of just
Sure, but
being
you'd have to do
there.
that anyway. Like, if you have one army in Timbuktu, you're just going to get dislodged and kicked out if you don't have good relationships with the colonials there.
Yeah,
In fact, I think it's very vulnerable to that sort of thing. I mean, we see West Africa colonies with one unit die all the time to that sort of stuff. Uh,
I suppose. I just like putting my foot in the door first.
yeah, especially with the pre-core, I think it's justified itself a lot more. But I like this. Yeah, order set a lot of Ottomans. So I think it's pretty strong. Again, I don't think it's an every game thing. No year one stab is ever going to be, but I think it's a good order set to go for.
Yeah, Euro one stabs are fun though in Imp Dip. They're
Yeah, they're so rare. They're definitely fun to see.
yeah. I don't know why this is happening, but
I think it's just a hold, but it's funny.
yeah, this is what a core order looks like. It's square.
Yes, which they're doing on their core on the very first turn of the game.
Yeah, so it's not really doing anything. But yes, is there anything special of note that happens this turn? Because it seems like most of what you talked about was prep
Let's
for
see.
the whole year.
Okay, yeah. Reviewing my notes, we have the Spain tactics thing. There was a four-way colonial alliance here. So if we look over at North America, uh, France is getting stabbed hard.
Oh yeah,
Yeah. So at
goodbye,
this point, the board's
Brother Murray.
understanding was there's a four-way colonial alliance of all the colonials except France. If you go over to Europe as well, you'll see literally every colonial attacking France except France. So Spain's attacking France. They're walking into Gulf of Leon. We see Portugal's moving
Oh
up into
wow,
Iberian Current. England's moving to the Channel, and the Dutch are moving to Ghent. Literally four-way colonial alliance versus France. Um,
yeah, not really great. Austria's happy though. I think.
yeah, England was seen as the puppet master for a few reasons. I think just in general, they're like very press active. And in my conversations with England, they talked about not wanting to fight any colonials, and like they talked a little bit about this five-way colonial alliance idea. So they just generally seem to be the ringleader of this like massive colonial thing.
Halfway colonial
Um,
alliance.
yeah.
Now that would
Well,
be something to behold.
so it was interesting. I think Poland leaked to me that the stab on France was happening, and then I went to England and started talking to them about it, and they denied it, and they said, no, we're a five-way colonial alliance. Um, of course, it did end
Uh,
up happening. Interestingly enough, there were also rumors following this phase that France was vassalizing to Portugal because of all the four colonials that stabbed Portugal. That stabbed France. Portugal was the only one that told France, "Hey, all the colonials are stabbing, and I'm stabbing you too," because all the other colonials are doing it. So France took this as this is the vision at the time. I don't think it was entirely fair or accurate, but the vision at the time was France took Portugal's telling them about the stab, but also stabbing as very gracious and wanted to work heavily with Portugal after this point. Um,
I
a
mean,
lot of regionals, of course, were confounded and very sad because they're like, hey, can't you like fight against the colonials, including Portugal? I mean, Adron in particular was very bummed out about this because Adron wanted France's help against Portugal basically the entire game. Um,
it's the less of four evils, one that actually
yeah,
told you the truth that they're gonna kill you.
and I was having I was having a very difficult time influencing France out of any of my like neighbors or neighbors, where it was just like basically, like, whenever I talked to them, they were just like, yeah, but I want to work with Portugal and I want to work with the colonials, despite the fact that, all of them have stabbed me. Portugal maybe to a lesser extent. And, Audron hasn't stabbed me, Congo hasn't stabbed me, but I still want to work with Portugal here. Not that I particularly wanted France-Audron relationships, but the reason I was the reason I was pushing so hard and having all these conversations with France again was because I wanted them to bounce Mpondo here. And I thought it would be a very easy thing, but no. They wanted to bounce Cape Co, I guess, because they were more anti-Dutch. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, a bounce in Cave Co isn't terrible for you.
No, it's not, but if they're telling Dutch that they're going to do that, then maybe the Dutch is like, screw it, I'll take St. Helena instead.
That'd be a bounce
Thankfully,
too.
I don't think the Dutch wants to do that. And it is reasonable for the Dutch not to, because if France is
Like
going to go to war with them and France is going to work with Portugal, Dutch probably doesn't want to be stabbing me here. That's probably not great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it feels like they're already at war with France. They don't really want to make another enemy here. Bouncing in
Yeah.
Cave Co is not the worst. If you're going to bounce between someone who says they want to be your ally and then someone who says they don't.
Yeah. Although, to my
So it is
not credit, I
Zac.
guess, to my discredit, it is me, and I did walk into Loingo, so.
Yes, this is true. You did technically stab them as well.
Yes, I would consider this a stab because I did not tell them in advance that I was moving to Loingo. However, I don't intend to continue it, and I'm basically I'm going with the argument of like, yeah, I'll be in Mandara by the end of the year, and we'll be fine, as if nothing ever happened.
Yeah.
And so if we go to moves, I mean, I'm already basically saying what I was going to do. I'm going to just move into Mandara. I'm just going to
Oh, do
support
we want to move
myself.
to
I'm
the
going to take
next?
St. Helena. Yeah, I'm taking my 4 neutrals. There's no surprises in my moves.
Alrighty. Yeah.
Yep. And it goes in a way that makes me very happy. We get the Dutch not bouncing me. Literally, I think I wrote in my void immediately after this phase resolved, was I checked the map, I said, great, no St. Helena bounce, I'll look at the rest later. I think I just like opened the map when it adjudicated, looked at the St. Helena thing, and then
That
like
kind of was
logged
the only
off
thing you had to worry
and came
about.
back to the game the next day. Yeah, because I didn't really need anything else. No other surprises. I mean, Audron bounced Portugal out of Burundi, which is great for me. Really happy to see that.
Yeah, and not even support themselves in. They just walked in
Oh,
as
that's
soon as
even
you
better.
were.
Yeah, that makes me more happy. I think that was maybe the plan. I don't know. Either way, I'm really happy about this because I already expected Audron Portugal war, but now it's just confirmed basically. And this gives me a lot of leverage because this just happened in the fall. So this gives me a lot of leverage going into the winter in terms of being able to convince Audron and Portugal to build fleets, which is very, very important to me, as I've established previously.
Yeah. Want a war on your border that doesn't involve you.
Um, Yeah, so I'm doing a lot of year 1 build press. I care a lot about my year 1 builds, and we'll see why in this game. I think it mattered a lot, and I do. Yeah, the year 1 builds are actually going to really set the tone for basically the rest of the game.
I imagine it's because of Sao Tome.
Less that actually. So we've already talked a little about builds in Ageron and Portugal. I want Portugal to build 3 fleets, or 2 fleets, but no armies. I want Ageron to build at least 3 fleets, ideally 4 fleets, and I'm even pitching 4 fleets. And I do think there's arguments for why they should build 4 fleets here that I actually think are quite convincing. But if they don't want to build 4 fleets, they can build 3 fleets in a northern army. So Army Hopio would be fine by me. And that would go up and take Warsangali, which they didn't take last year.
Yeah.
But that would be perfectly fine with me. I just don't want an army in Baido. That's the one thing I'm asking for. It's like, or not even necessarily Baido. I just don't want a southern army, I think is what I say. Yeah. Which I guess would be Baido or Marie, technically.
Yeah. Because they only need technically the 2 armies to fight Portugal here if they have
Yeah,
your armies for support.
that's basically the argument. And they're never going to take another inland center, right? Like, I forget if Burundi, I think Burundi's probably offered to them, but even then I can just support them too. There's no real reason that they would ever need another army here, right? Like, I can take Barotes without them ever building another army. And then any other additional army is just going to be anti-me or anti-Abyssinia, I guess, but like we're too early to be talking about stabbing Abyssinia here. So, and the army Hobio could do it just as well. So I don't think there's really a good argument for Ageron to build a southern army here, which is why it's not necessarily a leverage thing, although that's part of why I'm asking for it. But I actually just genuinely think Ageron doesn't have a good excuse to build a southern army here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's some
So
quite interesting things here. I see what you mean by convoy, though, because that is what
yes,
happened.
it did happen, but they did not support it. They did walk into Axum. Generally a decent moveset for both sides. It's not terrible for either of
Yeah.
them. Uh, Abyssinia still gets their 2 builds, which is good. Yeah.
You see, the issue with this is Ottomans used three units to take one supply center. They could have grabbed 3 neutrals instead. Is I think
Yes,
the biggest
but
counter
they
argument.
also took 2 centers away from Abyssinia. So it's a net 3 if you think about it in terms of Ottoman and Abyssinia war.
2? Which
So they're stopping Tigray from taking a center, and they're also taking 1 off of Mekele.
I see.
Yeah.
I guess because that puts them at 1, 2, 3,
So
6.
Abyssinia is +2 as opposed to +4.
Yeah.
So it is kind of a +3 in a way. And they have both Cairo and Mecca open here for builds. So actually, I like Ottoman's position here.
Yeah. I guess so. I mean, it's definitely good for you that they're fighting. It means you don't have to worry
Sure.
about Abyssinia walking towards you.
Yep. I did expect them to fight anyway. I don't think I've ever seen an Abyssinia go after Kongo before fighting Ottomans, really.
This area is interesting.
Yeah, not a lot of surprises though. It's the colonials are all taking their neutrals. One of the more interesting things is that Natakaru doesn't end up being taken, and that
Yeah.
Olata goes to France, whereas usually you see that being like a Portugal thing or something. But yeah.
Yeah. What was there? There was some other stuff here that I wanted to look at. Some big support errors. That's funny.
I'm really getting along with Safavids right now. I just had that as a note in my notes. I don't know why. I'm talking a lot with Safavids. We're talking a lot about Ottomans and Portugal and stuff.
I don't remember the Safavids player much at all.
Um, in terms of build negotiations, let's see. Yeah, let's look at West Africa real quick. I'm talking to England. I want Cormentine here, or Cormenton, I don't know, to be either an army or wave. So I'm just like, don't build a fleet there. They actually even suggest building a fleet and taking Sao Tome. I'm like, nope, you're not doing that. I'm taking Sao Tome. Yeah. Um, and I actually eventually successfully convinced them to agree to a wave, which I wasn't actually pushing that hard for. Like, I'm fine for them doing an army, but I just don't want them doing a fleet.
Yeah. I mean,
Um, yeah,
from their perspective, they are surrounded by all allies.
exactly. So that's why I don't think they wanted to build the army. So they're just happy to have the keep where they're at, and I'm fine with that too. I just don't want the fleet because I think that's heavily incentivized to mess with Sao Tome or to come attack me with the Dutch or something. Um,
Yeah.
let's see. Negotiating with the Dutch, I want a wave in Fernando Po. I talked to them about how I don't think there's a reason to build in Fernando Po except to stab Congo, which I think is basically true. In fact, I looked at all the Dutch's cores around the map, and I was like, this is the first one I would wave here, which is actually pretty true. It's still pro-Congo bias, but I think Fernando Po, if you don't want to go to war with Congo, there's no reason to build there. It literally can't do anything. It can't reach any centers that you haven't already captured. It's just kind of just like very close to Congo, and that's all. I mean, I guess it can help you take Sao Tome, but even then you could build a fleet in Great Ardra to do that. So yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
It'd be good to get
so
them to wave there. 'Cause then,
wave Fernando Po, and then the other thing I'm trying to negotiate for is no fleet in Great Ardra. I'm fine with an army there, but I don't want them to build a fleet there, and I want them to concede Sao Tome. In exchange for no fleet build in Great Ardra and letting me take Sao Tome, I'm willing to like concede a lot, basically, like because those are 2 fairly big asks. Because if they're waving Great Ardra or building an army there, and letting me take Sao Tome, I'm very happy. So I think at this point I agree to give them Mandara, and I'm trying
oh,
to think what else. I think it's just Mandara. Let's see.
do you actually give them Mandara? That's the question.
I don't know. We'll see. Um, I do agree at the time though as well that like I'm willing to give them Indara for this. Like I think that is worth it to me. Because this basically ensures that the Dutch can't stop me as well, at least this year. And I get Sao Tome, so I'm not going negative. The Dutch gets a +1, and the Dutch isn't attacking me or building units that are coming after me. And they have more time with their armies to go after like England or something, or whoever they want to in West Africa.
Yeah, go for all those juicy neutrals that were left behind by the
Yeah,
Ottomans.
and there's like a bunch of countries there that, yeah, and there's Agadir is completely left behind, Timbuktu, yeah, they have a bunch of stuff they can do over there. Let's see. I'm also talking to Portugal a lot, starting to talk about like Portuguese Congo impunity. Something that's interesting is we're talking a lot about, and we'll get to this more later, but like this idea of like what Congo and Portugal both need to get to reach our impunities and how much Portugal needs to take in Africa to reach their VCSC amount. And the reason that this becomes relevant is Portugal is like seems very interested in potentially selling me a lot of centers in the long term, specifically both Barotes and Delagoa and some of other like South Africa stuff potentially, and that makes me very happy because I can see ways to make a Congo Portugal dual impunity happen, and also makes me very happy in terms of like, oh, Portugal's actually going to like support me and help me get to my impunity. And I mean, yeah, ally offering you dots. I mean, that's great, right?
Yeah, their dots too, even.
So they're very much winning me over here. So in terms of like something I'd written is like next year I hope to take Sao Tome, hopefully Barrots with Portuguese's permission, and Darfur with Abyssinia's permission. That was kind of what I was hoping for. At least when I was thinking about like what are the next 3 builds I'm going to take. I have great relationships with both Portugal and the Dutch at this point. I'm talking a lot about like impunity stuff with both of them. African regional talks are still going well. Abyssinia is getting a bit less active, and Ajuran isn't initiating a lot of conversations, but I still get the sense that both of them want to work with me. Yeah, Portugal also mentions trading away Delagoa. I really like transferring away Delagoa even more so than the Barotes idea. I think Barotes is originally mentioned as a trade idea, and then Portugal's like, maybe I can do Delagoa instead. And I really like that idea. One of my big worries with Portugal here is that they have 3 cores, which lets them build a lot and potentially stab me in the future, which is not necessarily a worry I have with like, I don't know, maybe the Dutch or something. Although even with the Dutch, I have a similar concern with Fernando Po, which is I want them to have less of these cores, so they'll have less of an ability to stab me. And taking Delagoa means they can only ever put down a unit in Beira and Moravi, which reduces a lot of their stab impact because an army in Delagoa that can move into Kalahari is very big in terms of being able to stab me. So if Delagoa is Congo or even just like occupied by Portugal and such that it could not be built in a winter, that's really valuable.
That's really
Let's see.
funny. Like
Yeah.
arguing for, hey, let me take your dots so you can't stab me to make me feel better.
um, it was more founded in impunity talks. So like,
Yeah,
what does it take for Congo to get to 32 in impunity, and what does it take for Portugal to reach their impunity? The basic thing, again, if you look at the VSCC requirements, Portugal has to 4 times their starting, and Congo has to 8 times their starting. So if you think about that
yeah,
in terms of just Africa, Congo needs to end with 32 dots in Africa. And then if you assume that Portugal is going to get the same in Africa as other regions, which is already like a very generous assumption, because theoretically Portugal could do more elsewhere, and they don't have to get it all in Africa. They'd only have to get 4 times their starting in Africa, and their starting is 3. So they'd only need to get to 12. And
yeah,
once you start to count up stuff like Mapondo, Cape Co, yeah, exactly, the Ajuran home centers and all of Madagascar, they're like already at 12,
yeah.
even if
It's
they're
not a
selling
lot.
stuff like Barotes. I think the calculation we got to was something like they can get like 15 centers if we include like Barotes and everything. So if they sell me Barotes, Delagoa, and like uh, Mapondo or something, they still were at 12 centers, which is still enough to reach their VSCC, even assuming that they're not winning in other regions. So this might sound kind of ridiculous, but it's kind of born out of the discrepancy in how many nearby centers we need. Because I need 32, which is it's going to be a lot, and just kind of like acknowledging this fact and being like, hey, this is what a regional needs to impunity. I want to make sure that we're both okay with this and on board with this now, and you're not thinking later on like we're gonna expect to have equal dots. Like, and obviously this is advantageous to me because I want them to agree. Like, whenever we're killing someone, for example, give me like 2 dots for every 1 dot they get. But it's also being realistic of like, hey, if I'm going to reach the impunity, I need 2 dots for every 1 dot that you get in Africa, or more, honestly.
Yeah.
So setting that expectation, because I think a lot of people in diplomacy have this very basic, like, you get 1 dot, I get 1 dot, and that does not work for a colonial regional relationship. Or it can in some cases, but like, yeah,
Just
you don't
depends on
want
how
that as a
well
regional.
each power's doing.
Exactly, and yeah, and they're different regions, and yeah, there's more nuances. Like I don't want to ever say a hard rule in diplomacy, but yeah, I'm trying to pitch these reasons that I think, again, I think most of it is true, and like most of it is like well reasoned, but it's also favorable to me if they're willing to accept to sell me centers, especially centers that make stabs less likely.
Yeah.
I also want Fernando Poe at some point from the Dutch. Similarly, I want to trade for that, but there's nothing we can trade for it right now because they're already giving me Sao Tome, so it's like I can't trade them Banda as well. They're already taking Mandara, but that's just like on my mind as something I want to trade with them eventually.
Yeah.
Yeah. In terms
Also,
of the first year leaderboard, we have England on top, which is very scary because they're already this like puppet leader
yeah.
figure. The Dutch are in second, Portugal's in third, and then there's a pretty big drop off down in VSCC to like Ottomans, Inuit, France, etc. And I'm right in the middle, as high as I could be.
And that's just because colonials can get their VSCC higher quicker than regionals
Yes,
can.
but there's some notable. So I did save the percentages. I won't have the percentages for every year, but I do have some. I have them for the first year. England is already up to 31%. They went plus what was it, 13 in the first year, and they start on 14 centers. So this is this is a historically good England start. I think it's the peak possible for the power. And there's a few other Englands that have done this before. Like plus 13 is not they're not the first ever, but like it's a very good England start. They're already at 31% of their victory condition. Whereas the drop off down is 28.5 for Netherlands, 25 for Portugal, 21 for Ottomans, and we start again it's a pretty big drop off. And then most of the board is sitting around the like 15-ish range, so I'm at 14%.
I think the only unit of England's that didn't take a supply center is English Channel,
Uh-huh.
which
Yeah, that was an
technically could
interesting
have
one. I think
gotten Christiania, so they could have doubled.
yeah, there was some stuff in the phase as well about England was actually supposed to get supported into Nantes, but then they backed out of it or something like that. I don't know. There was some weird conversations around Nantes that were happening in this phase, I remember. Um,
Sniped Marseille. Sniped Naples. Whoa. That pressure going into Poland. Fun stuff's happening all around.
yep.
Yes, I noticed this too.
Yes, Portugal stabs Guarani. And this is actually pretty relevant. Maybe I should have brought it up. Because it means Portugal and Guarani are going to war. I wouldn't have gone for a stab like this. I think it's a 1 dot stab that guarantees they're going to use all of their year 1 builds to retaliate and come fight you.
Yeah,
Of which they have 3. So
that's
this
two
doesn't seem very
fleets
pleasant.
and
Yeah.
an army in Chiripa. It's not going to be fun.
Yeah, I would not go for a. I mean, I already tend to avoid small stabs, but I would never go for something like this.
Yeah, I also kind of feel like they're already at war with, at peace with Mapuche, so
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if war was going to break out between them.
Yeah, and this sort of thing is the reason why we don't see year 1 stabs happen a lot in this game. They also give up on a neutral to do this, you'll notice. Like they could have just taken Mato Grosso, so they're not even getting a build. They're just denying 1 build from Guarani.
Oh yeah, they are.
Um, or not Mato Grosso, sorry. I think it used to be called that, but now it's minus
Well,
Guerreros.
they're getting the same amount of builds in this area.
Yeah,
It's
they're not
like
losing a build, but they're going, yeah. They could have just rotated the army over and taken a build there.
I don't hate it. This unit, this dot is basically theirs. It's in their pocket, pretty much.
Sure, but I hate doing the stab in the first place.
Yeah.
Unless, do you think do you like it more than I do? Because I'm not a fan of the stab. I would heavily suggest against it.
It's not good of a stab because nobody else is committing against Girani. If you had Aymara or Mapuche on side, it would be a lot better.
I
But
guess, but
it
also
does.
like if you look at Aymar and Mapuche, this specific phase, what moves are they gonna do? Like Aymar can't do anything. Mapuche is obviously gonna take.
I mean, like I would have tried to push for something to happen in the spring.
In the spring. Yeah.
Though I don't know how press down there went.
I don't know either. But I definitely wouldn't have done that. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things to look at on the board. Nothing else super relevant to me, I think. Yeah, I mean, the Dutch and Portugal do what you'd expect in Oceania, which I'm happy about.
Yeah. Here's the retreat.
Haiti does take Sambas, so they disagree with your opinion. But maybe they should have taken Cotabato.
I think they should have. That
Spain
army is
also
going to
decides to stab them, I think, but in a weird way that doesn't achieve much. Yeah, I don't really remember what Spain was doing this year, but they end up taking no neutrals in Oceania for basically no reason. Anyway.
We should go to winter, yes.
Yeah, it's winter. So yeah, I've been doing all this winter press. We talked about, yeah, cool.
So 2 fleets and 2 armies is what you're doing?
Oh yeah, I didn't talk about my own builds at all. That's hilarious. I actually didn't write anything in my notes about in my void about what I was doing with my builds here. I think
I think
the 2 fleets, 2 armies is very simple. I might actually be doing 3 armies, 1 fleet here though. That also seems very intuitive to me.
Would do 2 fleets.
I might do 2 fleets.
Because then you could have another fleet to back up St.
Definitely
Helena.
a fleet. Yeah, it's definitely fleet in Mabenza to take Sao Tome.
Yeah, I just feel like Army Soyo
Yeah, and Army
nothing.
Soyo sucks. So yeah, it was probably 2 fleets, 2 armies here. I can't really see a whole lot of reason I would deviate from that this year.
Yeah, look at that. Oh, and they waved in from Aunt No Po. I remember this.
So pretty much everyone does what they tell me that they're going to do. The Dutch tells me that they're going to wave in Fernando Po and build an army. Great. Fleets. Portugal builds 3 fleets, and that's the one exception. Army Vado.
They did not build 4 fleets.
So well, sad. Not even just that. They built a southern army. That's the big thing. Because if they're going to build an army, I wanted it to be an army in Hobyo. I don't see a justification for building an army in Vado that's not going against me.
That seems like a little bit of a stretch, but I can kind of see it.
You wanna justify it?
Yeah, I can do that. For Bunyoro to Burundi, Vado to Kismayo, Zanzibar to Macau. 3. You need 3 to break into Bemba.
Do you? So Pengo to Lindaluba, Mpemba to Matamba.
Like, because if you only have 2, if Zanzibar and Bunyoro, you have to move to Macau to bounce whatever's in here. But also you need to move to Kismayo because there's this army in Bemba. And I guess like you need an army in Kismayo.
Yeah, I think you just move Zanzibar to Kismayo. You accept that they're going to move to Makua.
Then they move to Comoros and Macau, and then
we have Sakalaba, remember, so you can bounce Comoros.
I think it's good. I don't think it's going after you.
I can kind of agree. Even if you want to justify it, you better tell Kongo here, because if Kongo explicitly says, I don't want you doing this, and then you say, cool, I won't do this, and then you do it, I think that's a stab. I don't think like you said, small stab. I actually don't. I care a little bit, but I don't care a ton. But I do think it is a stab, and it justifies me potentially being able to use that in leverage later and negotiation later.
I see.
Because Adran has stabbed me here.
I see.
Yeah. And it's also like in a normal game, I agree with you, but we're not in a normal game. We're in a game where Portugal just decided to build 3 fleets, and Dutch just decided to wave Fernando Po. So and straight up,
you're the only fleet to get Sao Tome uncontested.
Yes.
Well, technically not. This fleet.
Unironically, Adran has done the first stab of the game against me, and also the most hostile builds against me, which is hilarious to say, but also a true statement. Which, yes, the reason we're laughing is Adran still built 3 fleets and is pretty clearly wanting to work with us against Portugal because they just got Portugal.
Yeah, you're the one extra army. It's gonna be
But
such
it
a
is still the first
danger.
stab against me, and also the the most hostile builds against me.
Yeah,
um, yeah. Um,
awesome justification.
awesome, awesome. Um, I'm talking to Abyssinia if they want Darfur. Here, I kind of want them to offer me Darfur and just send Azande back to fight Ottomans. Um, and my and I'm basically just going to stab them here. If they don't give me Darfur, and it's just going to change how I attack them or stab them or whatever. Which is that like I cannot just let them sit on Azande and Darfur and then go fight Ottoman. Like that's not acceptable to me. Like those are two very free dots and they can't fight me anyway. So I want them to either just give me Darfur and I'm not going to attack them. Not that I'm saying that I'm going to attack them, but like I'm just saying like, hey, would you be okay with me taking Darfur? Um, or if they insist on taking Darfur, I'll let them walk into Darfur and I'll just follow them into Azande with Banda, and then I'll be able to support myself into Darfur in the fall, and I get a nice, very clean 2-dot stab
Yeah.
that literally takes only 2 units and is super unit efficient.
Yep.
And it also works perfectly with the Dutch taking Mandara off of me in the fall, which I'm currently planning on trading to them.
Oh yeah, that's right.
So that's going on in the mind. I'm talking a lot to Portugal. I think this is where the map comes in. Or actually, no, sorry, we're not
It's
using
in a
the
bit.
map here. Yeah, but I basically am talking impunity pitches to Portugal. We're having a lot of
Oh yeah.
conversations about what actual builds we need. And again, this is again where they're talking about Delagoa, and I'm very happy with them. Yeah, that conversation is continuing. Yeah, I have a list of all the dots, but I don't know if that matters.
Yeah. Generally, I imagine it's Audron dots, Madagascar,
Yep, basically.
pretty
Um,
much just that.
And then if they want to take extras, there's also the Arabia dots as well. I was also looking at Mara, Adan, and Sanaa as well for them.
Yeah.
Because they have that Muscat colony as well. It's really not hard for them to take those 3 dots over there.
What?
Moving
Mara.
over to Audron. So I just don't even bring up the stab really, or like call them out for it at this point. I just like, I thought I asked you not to build a Southern Army. That's weird. Um, but Audron sends to me. So we're talking a bit about like tactics against Portugal, of course, and I'm talking with Portugal about tactics against Audron. And Audron sends me a message. I noted as being particularly noteworthy this phase as being like kind of unhappy with the split of centers that we would end up getting. So specifically, the way that they saw it was that I would be getting Barotes, Cape Co, Mapondo, and Delagoa. Right? They thought I would be getting those 4, and that they would be getting Moravi, Beira, and Burundi. So they're like, you're getting 4 dots and I'm getting 3 dots. I should get a better deal than this, was basically what they were saying. They said it in a nicer way. What do you think about that message?
Uh, well, if you asked me a bit ago, like a few months ago, I'd say, "Oh yeah, okay, you can have Telegoa." But hmm, I I'm not sure. I'd say I don't know what I would say. That it's fine. They're getting Madagascar.
I definitely do say that. I say it's fine. So there's a bunch of thoughts here. So I think even if you're in an even position, like if we just talk objectively and we ignore the Congo that I was playing Congo in this match, I think that's kind of they're definitely pushing for more than even here. For some reason, they're not including Beira and Fort Dauphin as dots that they would be getting in this, or Reunion, those 3. Whereas pretty clearly they would be getting all 3 of those, which seems like a +3 on their side. And then the other thing is they're including dots like Cape Co on my side of the equation, whereas those are dots that they're not going to help me get at all. Which,
Yeah,
to be fair, I'm not really helping them get Madagascar to a certain significant extent. But including Cape Co in my dot count as if it's something that Audron is helping me get is also kind of arbitrary.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's just because you have a bigger border with Portugal than they do.
Sure, but yeah. So I thought that like even in the best case where this is an even alliance and both of us are in even position, this is probably too much of an ask. But they are not in that best case. They just did the most anti-me moves on the board, as we know. But even joking aside, understanding leverage, they should know that I'm in the position of all the leverage here. I'm in a way stronger position, and this is what I was talking about a little bit. And leverage is really the story of a lot of this early game. I'm in a position of incredible leverage after this winter phase resolves. I mean, we already know that Adran and Portugal want to go to war, but now with Portugal building 3 fleet builds, and Adran building 3 fleet builds, but even more so Portugal. Portugal has loudly announced that they are going to war with Adran, and there's nothing else they can do. Like, if you look at their tactics, Adran and Portugal, even if they want to work together against me here, they really don't have an attack on me. And they're basically inevitably going to war with each other here.
Yeah.
Which means I am now in this 3-way triangle of powers here. Both Portugal and Adran need to work with me. I'm the deciding factor of who wins this war. I'm in the position of leverage, and they should be trying to appeal to me or giving me unequal deals that appeal to me that would want me to pick their side, right? It's basically a bidding war between Portugal and Adran of who can attract me as an ally and how much they're willing to give up to do that. And to come to me in a phase where that's the situation in terms of leverage and the bidding war and all that, and ask for not even an even deal, but more than an even deal, I think is a mistake. And it makes me, as the Congo player in this position, want to side with Portugal because I'm going to think, okay, you're not happy with what I see as a deal that's like relatively even or even favors you potentially, and you want more than that. That means that you're either going to stab me for more than that at some point or continue to be unhappy. And whereas I have on the opposite side, I have a Portugal who's willingly offering me Barrotes and Delagoa. You're very much weakening my wantingness to work with you here. And you also just built an army in the south. So there's a lot of diplomatic things that I wanted to point out as Adran doing here. It's not random, or at least it should never be random who you choose to side with. And the moves that Adran is making are kind of pushing me away from siding with Adran here.
Yeah. Adran probably doesn't know the fact that Portugal's giving you Barrettes and Delagoa.
They don't, but they do know that they do know Portugal just built 3 fleets and that that Adran is wholly reliant on me if they want to win the war against Portugal.
Yeah.
Because I decide who wins that war. And there are actually reasons why I would favor Adran potentially, had they not made those 2 choices of building the Southern Army and pushing me for more dots as opposed to Portugal who's offering me actual dots. It's pretty hard to outbid a Portugal who's doing what Portugal's doing here in terms of like offering me Delago and Barrotes. Like I don't expect most Adrans to do more than that.
Yeah.
But
That's.
yeah. But at the same time, yeah. It's funny as well. I think I later joke that like Adran's mistake was not building 4 fleets here. Because yeah. Really the bigger lesson is probably just never to get so hyper committed into a death war that you need to offer this much leverage to another person. But even then it's just really hard because if
Death
a lot of
warring is bad.
yeah, but also a lot of choices that Adran would have made at this point would have just led to me siding with Portugal and killing them. So it's like if Adran decides to put down like 2 or 3 armies, for example, it's like okay, but now you're just gonna die to Congo Portugal. So it's not really a good jumping off point, and it's only going to get worse from here, in terms of a point where it'd be good for Adran to go against me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just identified this as like I have a great deal from Portugal, and I'm in a position in all the leverage. You shouldn't be pushing me for more benefits. That was a big note I had from this phase. I actually don't have a lot of other major press notes, but there's a lot of interesting stuff going on, I guess. Abyssinia and Ottomans are fighting really hard. Ottomans is investing very heavily in Africa, which I'm not super happy to see.
2 more armies.
Mhm.
Fleet in Mecca.
Mhm. Oh, I was involved with the Safavids thing, which is funny. Again, I had a very good relationship with Safavids, and I encouraged Safavids to build 2 fleets here. And talking about how it's like tactically good and they can like mess with Portugal a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is because I wanted Safavids to be a relevant power in Arabia, and also like maybe weaken Portugal a bit. This was still early in the game before when I was like still like somewhat on board with like weakening Portugal a bit. At this phase though, I'm starting to get like very on board with Portugal in general, and I think at this point my closest relationships on the map are with the Dutch and Portugal, which is a really interesting place and a really interesting game to be playing as Congo.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how much else there is to talk about press. Very friendly with the Dutch. Every phase, I'm coordinating my moves with all my allies around me. I'm telling I'm telling Portugal what I'm doing. I'm telling Dutch what I'm doing. I expect them to do the same and tell me what they're doing, and we're working on tactics together. I am still playing this middle ground between Adran and Portugal, and I'm also playing the middle ground between Dutch and Portugal because Dutch and Portugal tensions are increasing a lot. I'm doing a lot of international press with a lot of other powers, and a lot of powers are either definitely pushing Dutch and Portugal against each other, and also offering to stab the other one to the other one. So like people are going to Portugal and saying, "Hey, I'll go in on Dutch if you go in with me." Particular, I don't think this is going to start more, but not necessarily right now. But Tokugawa and Ming were really big on this. They were pushing a lot of anti-Dutch stuff, I think, at the time. So they were like, we're going to go in on Dutch and work with Portugal here, and trying to get the whole board to coalition the Dutch. That was still developing around this time, but that's just happening this entire like second year.
It's really funny.
But
The
yeah,
one dot.
I don't have a whole lot else to say about spring. I guess I have interesting tactics for the first time, so I have some choices. You can talk about maybe what you would do in my position. I've already talked a little bit about wanting this potential Azande and Darfur stab because I don't think that Abyssinia can really retaliate, and
Yeah, it's a good one.
I'm not meaning to even potentially kill Abyssinia here. I'm happy to just stop at Azande and Darfur. Like that's all I really want. Because I don't want them to die too quickly and then Ottomans just to take over, and now I have a big Ottomans to my north that I have to deal with. I'm fine with them being a shield against Ottomans for a very long period of time and propping them up and keeping them alive as like a vassal state, depending on how they react to the stab.
Yeah, it just kind of what most of your moves do kind of depends on who you actually want to take a side with.
Yes. And I
Because
believe I want to avoid taking a side in the spring.
yeah, that makes sense.
Yes.
So
So I
you
believe at this
probably
time,
move to Kalahari.
Portugal, yeah, I think Portugal's offering me support into Burundi, and I'm, and Adran is asking me for support into Burundi.
That would
So
be
that's just another
funny.
one of those examples of like Portugal's offering me Burundi and Adran wants it for themselves. So
Alrighty, we want to look at the moves.
yep, I don't remember exactly what I did, but I have a general sense of I know I moved towards Burundi.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you moved heavily against Portugal. It looks
I
like.
do. Yeah.
And I was wondering what you're gonna do with St. Helena, which I guess is just move to South Atlantic Ocean.
Mhm. Yeah,
Which
because even if I get stabbed, I can just support myself back in. Um,
yeah,
it was a little bit awkward, I think, because I think the Dutch was asking me for support into Cape Co here, and I didn't super want to give it to them because I didn't want to make clear indicators on the map that I was pro-Dutch to Portugal. Like I didn't want to pick a side between Dutch and Portugal. Excuse me, this early.
yeah,
Cross that
that
hole
makes
just kind of
sense.
funky.
Yeah, you do that stab and you do a
I do.
bouncing knee.
The rebounds, I think, was negotiated. Well, I'm sure it was negotiated. I wasn't stabbing Dutch at this point. I forget, but yes, you'll notice I don't have to go with Mandara this year. I don't know how I
Yeah,
got that, but
yeah. I was thinking
because
when
I'm
you first said that, I was like, I don't remember a single time in a game where Zac has given up a supply center to somebody.
I don't remember. I think there was something about I don't know. I think yeah, I don't know. I don't remember. I think I didn't want them in Nuri and Mandara or something, which is like fair. Like I didn't want them. And I think the Nuri bounce is like very safe for both of us because they would know that I wasn't moving against them either. So I liked this Nuri bounce. Obviously, it's great for me because I can't take Mandara here. I think
Yeah,
the expectation was if they were going to take Mandara, they'd take it through Hassa, but then of course they have this free Agates. But then maybe also because they're getting free Agates, like it's kind of like, hey, you don't really need Mandara, do you? Because you're getting free Agates, and yeah,
that makes
and you need to
sense.
defend Hassa anyway. And also, you kind of want that army to stay in Benin because it can like guard Great Ardra and stuff. So like, I don't know. I don't think this is like bad for the Dutch, but yes, they are not getting Mandara, and clearly they knew that they were not getting it with their moves. So it's not like I'm never backpedaling out of offering Mandara. It's just they have other things to do, and they're not valuing it very highly because their good friend Kongo will always give them Mandara when they want it in the future, of course. So it's not they don't have to take it this year.
Preservation held.
Yeah,
So
I mentioned that too. Cross it hold is really interesting,
they did
especially
not pick
because
a
you'd
side
expect
either.
them to support Portugal in, or maybe the agreement was that Portugal would take it in the fall because that way Mpondo's not in danger.
I think I remember. So at the beginning, like near the beginning of this game, I was following it decently well up to a certain point, and then I just kind of forgot about the game, and so I barely checked the server.
Yeah.
So I do remember their first few turns a decent bit about France.
Oh, there's a much more interesting thing that I completely forgot about and we should have gone to. Look over at Maristad, in South America.
Oh,
It happens. The Dutch stabs Portugal
yay!
here.
Looks like Portugal's
And I
dying
think I
really
even
bad.
warned Portugal before it was happening, not necessarily because I was getting so many rumors from other regionals that I was sure that they were getting rumors from other regionals. I obviously didn't leak the details or anything like that. And it was one of those like, we get these a lot in diplomacy, but sort of like cry wolf situations where Portugal, I'm sure, had heard from so many people that the Dutch was stabbing them at this point, and on so many phases that they potentially didn't believe it or they didn't want to believe it, so they didn't guard against it. And I was happy to see them fighting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Did it happen down here?
I think so.
It
Yeah.
did. Ooh. And the Dutch is supporting Mapuche.
Yeah. And Mapuche's getting Australia. It's pretty good for Mapuche in general.
See,
It also
this is
has,
why you don't go for Samus. Told you.
yeah. It also
I
has
know.
implications
I've
for
made
South
this mistake
America.
before.
Yeah. Look at Spain too, walking into Tuna.
Ugh. Flash.
Yeah.
I gotta stop looking over there.
Yeah.
It
There's also
hurts.
implications for South America. If you look at Guarani and Mapuche, you'll notice, oh, Mapuche is working with Guarani against. Actually, not really.
No,
No,
it
never
looks
mind.
like they're working
Mapuche
against
is
Guarani.
stabbing Guarani. Interesting. Okay. I thought that because Mapuche was working against Portugal and Oceania, but no. Okay.
Yeah, it looks like
Stabbing Guarani, yeah.
they can get they can get one, maybe
I will
two.
say, with the post-game context, this is a fake stab. Looks real, though.
Oh yeah,
This is
I'm
negotiated
aware.
Guarani.
I'm aware. I was like,
Yeah.
these three are good pals.
Niani Hold's a bit interesting. West Africa's kind of a mess. I didn't really understand what France is doing here. They chose not to build in St. Louis, which is kind of fine, but then they walk into Timbuktu and just let Poland take Natakaru, and presumably Portugal's taking St. Louis. Oh, this is another case of like, this is again where like I was talking to France, and even after this phase, I think France was still like, nah, Portugal's my friend, and everyone was like, what are you doing? So this is where like a lot of the like France is a vassal to Portugal
Oh
conversation was
no.
continuing, because there's no way you see a moveset like this and are like, yeah, Portugal's still going to work with me, still my friend. And Algeron would be bashing their head against the wall with this because, as you'll see in Madagascar, France is working with Portugal, and that's not going to change anytime soon.
Yeah, they moved to not here to take Sakalava.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, are you taking Barotes here? Or...
I believe I was offered Barotes by Portugal. Yep. Portugal's moves are all what we negotiated. Happy to see the armies rotate that way. It's very favorable to me.
Yeah,
In
that
fact,
puts
I've
you
guaranteed
at a
Barotes.
+4 here, right? So Darfur, Zandes.
Let me just see. I had a really high thing that I could have gotten. We'll consistently see a
Sultan.
theme, and this tends to happen a lot in my games, where I could take a lot of dots if I just stabbed for everything, but I'm not going to do it. So I'll always get less dots than I could potentially be getting every year, pretty much.
And that's just because of builds, not because he's
It's
bragging or
partially build
anything.
centers, and it's partially I want to keep relationships good.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Do we want to move on to the next turn, or do you have more things to say about this?
There was something else that was pretty interesting here, which is something I only found out post game, but it was just like I was really doing my press well with Portugal and the Dutch. Both of them thought I was on their side very heavily, so much so that even their colonial allies thought I was on their side. There's a conversation that I was only able to read post-phase that happens during this phase, post-game that happens during this phase, where both England and Portugal are talking about how Congo is anti-Dutch and will join them in a war against Dutch, and England and Portugal are in a colonial pair this game. And then Spain, Dutch are also having a conversation in the same phase where they're talking about how Congo is anti-Portugal and will join them in a war against Portugal, amongst other regionals that are being talked about. But I just thought that was really cool.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Your
Um,
double life
at this
is
point,
going
Portugal
well.
and I are talking about a year 3 stab on the Dutch that I'll be doing. The idea, and it's a very tactically effective plan, is since I'll have a fleet in Sao Tome, I'll be in a very good spot to stab the Dutch.
Oh
So
yeah,
that's kind of informing my year 2 fall moves, is that I want to move this fleet into Sao Tome. But very, very importantly, there's only 2 ways to make this happen. I'm telling Portugal in terms of how I want to stab the Dutch. I'm either going to be doing it in a way that the Dutch get 0 builds this winter and they can't reinforce in Africa, or more likely, the Dutch is going to get some builds this year. So I want the Dutch to see me as an ally until winter passes, because I can't have them building in Fernando Po and Great Ardra. I won't have an effective stab,
yeah,
and I won't stab them if the Dutch builds here. So you can't like leak anything, whatever, like because then I will not stab the Dutch. Uh, and it seems, and I even am telling them it seems likely that you and the Dutch will go to war by next spring. Obviously, the Dutch then just actually stabbed them, so it wasn't a thing. Uh,
yeah.
oh, I'm doing post stab press with the Abyssinia as well because I just stabbed them. I'm saying, hey, I've done all the math, and this is pretty true. I've looked at all my impunity maps. I basically need Azande and Darfur for it. Like it's very, very difficult to imagine a Congo impunity map without Azande and Darfur. But I don't need to kill you to get my impunity. I just need Azande and Darfur. And I'm willing to work with you. I keep vassals alive, which is true. Like I keep small powers alive. And I've even have a history of like doing that nip dip to a lot of success where they've even like grown and like done really well for themselves. Um, so yeah, I don't want to kill you, but like this needed to happen. And they seem pretty okay with it. Again, they're getting very quiet and checked out. By the end of this year, they're like sending like a sentence a phase sort of thing. Like
Yeah.
not very exciting, but yeah. Um, and I do think I want like I'm being truthful in that. Like I want to work with Abyssinia against Ottomans. Ottomans is a much bigger threat to the region and much bigger problem. So if they can just
What
let me take Zonde and Darfur, I will be very happy to help them.
and what's the situation with Ajuran here?
Adran thinks I'm on their side. I did the moves that we agreed. They're taking Burundi. They got Burundi. They want to support me into Bemba, and I'll support myself into Barotes. That's the plan. Um, I can actually take +7 here, I think was what I have, which is if I take Barotes, Delagoa, and Maristad. So Barotes,
Oh yeah,
Delagoa, Maristad, and Sao Tome, Azande, Darfur, and Burundi, I think, are the 7. So I can go +7 here. I'm not going to do that, but it's just funny. Like a lot of the phases I'll do like what's my max potential, and my max is +7.
yeah. Some of those are pretty terrible. Meyer Stud. I would not take Delago right now.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, let's look at retreats here. Uh, yeah, and then are you ready for the next moves?
Sure.
Oh, there we go. Okay, so you go into Bemba,
Yes, I take Audron support.
and oh,
Of course, this is
oh,
yes. I also take support into Cape Co. This was a conversation that was interesting. The Dutch wanted my support into Cape Co, and I think eventually I convinced the Dutch that like, hey, I'll just support myself in. Um,
it's also probably because I had to cover Meyer Stud while
Yeah, I
here.
think there's a variety of reasons, but I think I was basically like, I think I gave them a similar pitch to Portugal, not to the same extent, but like just of like, hey, if I'm gonna get 32 dots in Africa, I'm gonna be needing stuff like Cape Co, and that's like, yeah.
Yeah,
So, and I have 2 units on it already, so can you just let me support myself in, and I'll deny it from Portugal, and you can do other stuff. And they're like, yeah, I think that makes sense. So I convinced them to let me support myself in. Of course, I actually support my army in, which is interesting. Um, and Portugal also supports me in. Um, just in case. I don't know. I don't really know why I got Portugal to support me in, but I guess I didn't really have anything else to do.
Yeah.
I think that was part of the argument with the Dutch too, is like, hey, if I'm gonna stab Portugal, I need them. I don't know. I need them to think I'm on side or something. Adron probably should have been, or was a bit suspicious of this. I don't remember. Oh yeah, Adron should be very suspicious of this moves because I'm moving into Mongo for seemingly no reason.
Yeah, that.
But I am accepting their support in Debemba. I'm also not taking Veros, which is also pretty suspicious here. But these are, other than the Mongo move, actually no, I think I convinced Adron of this somehow because
Yeah,
they're supporting
I think you did
Samba and
convince
Debemba.
Mongo
Yeah, I think I convinced them that I was allowed to go to
because
Mongo here.
you needed another army to go up and defend against the
Right, that
Dutch or
was it.
something.
I was talking about stabbing the
Because you only
Dutch a
have
lot.
two up here, and you've got like 6 centers.
Yeah, I think I gave Adron that like I want to stab Dutch in spring year 3 because I have this Sao Tome to Gulf of Guinea move that's like so juicy. So I want to be able to send Mongo up so I actually have enough armies to do it. Of
Yeah.
course, I could have walked into Pango, but whatever.
But what this does is put 2 armies up in Europe.
It does. I don't know if I was ever explicit about going to Mongo. Maybe I only justified it after the fact because I can't imagine that they were thrilled about this.
Yeah, I imagine they weren't. But Ajran
But what are they going to do
lost.
with it?
They lost Sakalava.
And tactics-wise, I think they end up in. Does Portugal end up in Kismayo? No.
No.
Portugal ends up.
Portugal ends up
No,
in.
but Adran ends up in Makua. So, I mean, at this point, they're so entangled. This is what I was saying about it's not going to get any better. The Adran's not going to piece out Portugal in this position for basically under any condition, pretty much. Like they're in Makua. Like, what are they? What can they even do really? They just lost Sakalava. They only have 2 armies, and one of them's in Makua, and one of them's in Zanzibar. So they have the one Burundi army to attack me with. It's not. There's not a whole lot Adran can do here.
No. They can't get back up from Abyssinia either.
Nope.
Yeah, Adran's kind of screwed here.
I mean, they can keep working with me and become an INO power, which is kind of what I'm pitching, and hope I stay on their side. But
Yeah.
yeah, I do an interesting move that I think you just hovered over.
Oh,
Angola Basin's holding. Oh yeah, this mess. Yeah.
this is what the
Down
hell?
in Poland.
England got Timbuktu.
Yeah, England gets Timbuktu somehow.
That's awesome. I imagine that's not a
Despite
very
the support
common.
hold, despite Dutch stab. Oh, Dutch stabs England too here, which makes me really happy.
Portugal stabs Poland.
Yep, which makes sense. And this is again the French vassal thing.
So weird.
And Dutch stabs England, which yay.
And Portugal's fighting Spain? What in the hell is happening?
Yeah, I
What?
don't know what's going on with Spain and
Okay, and Ottomans is
people.
fighting Spain, but
Spain's
Spain's
stab here
fighting
is kind of legendary and hilarious. Look at those armies.
that's
We should check in on that next year as well and see what happens with
yeah,
that.
that's a nightmare, dude. It's
We should remember to check in Iberia next year.
yeah.
We haven't paid too much attention to it so far, but England and Portugal have been working together consistently in India, and they're taking
Yeah.
Hyderabad, and it's not looking great
Gondwana.
for Mughals. But Mughals is working with Adran.
Yeah. The Dutch is bouncing England out.
We see Mapuche flip flop and work with Portugal here to stab the Dutch. And we'll see this a lot in coming phases. Mapuche will
And
flip back and
Spain
forth
flip flopped to work with Ayatollah.
Ayutthaya.
Oh.
Yeah, because they're stabbing colonials, I guess. But then Ayutthaya also seems to stab Spain here. I don't know.
Here's that
I guess maybe the South China
kill
Sea moves
Formosa plan that you were talking about.
mentioned. Yep.
There's a lot of interesting stuff going on. Here's one of your members of that.
My information group getting absolutely destroyed, yeah.
Yeah, he got stabbed pretty bad there.
Ching is not doing so hot, yeah.
No, not, not really.
No. You know who else isn't doing so hot? Safavid, sadly. And I was actually warning them about an Ottoman stab too, just because I was giving them positional advice because I like them. And they get hit by the stab really hard. And I was really sad because like they very much had the mindset of like Ottomans is a great ally. Ottomans will never stab me. And I was like, I don't know. Ottomans hasn't done anything to justify that yet. That level of trust.
If only this convoy worked, that'd been so cool.
Yeah.
I like how you built Caspian Sea.
Yeah, I like seeing Caspian Sea. I haven't seen it that much, but it's terrible in this situation.
Oh wait,
Uh,
no, is it?
yeah, it's a
I
fake
get
stab still.
it's
I think.
fixed. It's just I imagine it's agreed upon trade.
Yeah, I think this is agreed, but
Huh.
kind of wild to agree to. But
Yeah, especially when you're at war. But
I guess you have to do what you
eh,
have to do.
yeah, they're gaining. So oh, the Dutch did stab England.
Yes. Well, they did in Africa too. Yeah.
Oh yeah, they did everywhere then. Yeah, this place is. I love West Africa and the Caribbean because they're always such a mess.
Yeah, I like it a lot.
Like, what in the world am I looking at?
I think adding colonial thunderdomes has done a lot to make the game more interesting.
Yeah.
So we haven't talked about my moves at all, so maybe we should talk a little bit about
Oh
Kongo here.
yes. Sorry.
I do some interesting things. I take the support into Bemba. I don't take Barotes here. I don't take Delagoa either, which is very interesting. Despite knowing that Delagoa would be pretty open here, and also knowing that Barotes I can obviously guarantee. So that gives some comfort to Ajuran. Or actually, sorry, no, not to Ajuran, to Portugal. Um, let's see. It also lets me ask of Portugal something that I'm about to ask, I believe, which is I want them to disband Bemba. I'm going to ask them to disband Bemba here.
I see.
Because Bemba is an army. We don't like armies.
Want that?
I would rather them build it elsewhere on the map or rebuild it as a fleet. I don't want them to have armies. They don't need armies. I can do things. I forget if I think I asked them to disband it here. Yeah. And that was part of why
Oh,
I did this moveset.
why did
That's
Ing?
also interesting. Yeah.
Why did this hold?
You actually questioned this in my. This was intentional. I did not make a mistake here. You actually questioned this in my void as well right after I did it.
Yeah.
Do you want to try to reconstruct why I did this here?
Yeah. Let me
Because it
try
was
to remember
intentional
here.
and I had reasons.
You probably didn't want the Dutch to move into Angola Basin. One.
That's possible. Yeah, that's definitely part of it. I'm sure that would really suck.
Secondly, where would it go? Uh, I
To the
know
fall
why.
phase also.
Yeah, Gold Coast.
Yes. I want to move into Gold Coast, and if I
Yeah,
move into,
you're gonna be building a
uh,
fleet. You're gonna backfill
if I
Angola.
cover St. Helena here, which is the other obvious choice, I cannot move into Gold Coast,
Yes.
and it delays my fleet tempo by a phase.
Yes.
And especially if England builds a fleet in Cormonton, I really want to be able to bounce them and make sure I can get a clean stab on the Dutch
Now
without.
that they have three here, they might build something. Well, they're definitely
Yeah.
gonna build an army because they need
Yep.
to cover.
I want them to build. Yeah, it's true. I also didn't know if the Dutch was actually going to stab England or not. So I want England to build an army. I'm sure England will happily build an army here. I want Dutch to not build in Fernando Po, which I'm sure they won't. And I want them to build an army in Great Ardra, which I'm sure they probably will.
Yep.
That's part of why getting the Dutch to stab England is so huge here, because I can kind of guarantee they'll go for the builds I want them to.
Oh, they could have retreated to Lundaluba.
Oh, both of Portugal's armies are dislodged. I think I asked for them to disband both. Yeah, that sounds
I
right.
Man, you really are asking them a lot.
But like, why wouldn't you here? It's actually pretty risky for me because they have a retreat until end of. Do they actually have a? Is that a fake retreat? I think that's a fake retreat.
No, that's a real retreat because
Oh no, because
you
yeah,
moved
no,
to
that is a real
Mongo.
retreat. Yeah, I remember being a little bit nervous about this, but I think I just believed them. They wouldn't go
Yeah,
for it.
I mean
And I could deal with it anyway because I
you
had the
got
builds.
what +4 anyways. So
Did I +4?
yeah,
I might have.
Sao Tome, Darfur,
Yep, I did.
Ozambe, and Cape Coast.
Yeah. So yeah, even if they do, I can deal with it, but it would be really annoying.
Really
But yeah, I asked them
tall
to
empire
disband
here.
both. I think disbanding both is a reasonable request here. Yes, it gives up Barotes, but they've already offered me Barotes anyways, so assuming that they're giving up defending Barot's, I don't think they have a justifiable reason to keep an army.
I'd say keeping Moravi's okay.
Well, you just rebuild Fleet Moravia.
Oh, true.
Yep. So that's the idea. I'm pitching to them is just disband both armies, rebuild the fleet. The fleet's more useful for you anyway.
Yeah.
And quite literally, like, they'll only have coastal control is the idea.
Do we want to look at the retreat?
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Oh, wow. I just noticed this thing.
Oh, yeah, the ocean. All the ocean retreats are always ridiculous.
Yeah. Okay. And they did it.
They did it. I'm super happy.
That's surprising.
So at this point, I'm basically confirming my plans of like, okay, yeah, I'm definitely stopping the Dutch in year 3. I'm super happy with Portugal here.
Yeah, you really don't have a lot of issues going on.
No, my position is amazing here. I really like it.
Yeah. I think around this time is when I stopped paying attention.
Yeah. Which is sad because yeah, this is a really good spot. I'm really happy with how I've been playing.
Actually, here. No, I remember Fernando.
Yeah, I'm asking the big thing this winter phase I'm thinking about is I need the Dutch not to build. Oh wow, I don't want them to build in Africa entirely this winter. Apparently, I mean I'd still be happy with them building an army in Great Ardra, but apparently I was hoping for them to build nothing, which maybe is possible. I don't know how many builds they're getting, but I do know that they're top boarding I think this year, based on how yep. They're topping. England's in second, still doing great.
You're 5th.
Portugal's 3rd, and I'm in 5th. Yes, I'm tied with Austria. One of my information brethren is doing really well.
Yeah, they've just united Italy.
Yeah, they +4 twice as well.
Yeah, they're good allies with Ottomans here.
Yeah, at this point, Austria and I, yeah, we're the best Austria and the best Kongo across all of the games currently happening in this wave, which they would send me statistics on that every phase or so, every year or so, which was fun to keep up.
Too bad your third friend isn't doing so good.
No, they're not.
I really was expecting all 3 of you to do really well.
I was as well, just because they were so active. But Ming and Tokugawa are also fairly active, strong players.
Yeah.
I mean, I know they had a lot of disagreements, a lot of drama over in Asia, which I'm not surprised by. And I didn't follow it closely enough to know who was on the right or wrong. But yeah.
Yeah.
I know at the very least, Qing does not do so well.
Yeah, Narada retreated to Imarina.
Yep. I also had some relevance to that decision. I mean, they didn't really have that much choices. I think it was just that or disband, and I wanted them to take the retreat so they couldn't rebuild an army or something.
Yeah.
And it's also just a good place to be. I mean, you'd rather be there than a rebuild, so I think it makes sense to take that retreat all the time.
For builds, I want to take a guess. 2 armies, 2 fleets.
Wow. It could be right. It's either that or 3 armies, 1 fleet. Those are basically the 2 options I have.
Actually, yeah, 3 armies, because I think you want to go for Fernando, right?
Sure. Although I could do it with a fleet too.
Yeah. I suppose.
Yeah. I think this is a 3 army, 1 fleet phase. I don't think I really want the 2nd fleet.
Let's see. It's a
some other stuff to mention actually. I mean, we already revealed it. It's fine. But the reason I mentioned the Marstad thing is I actually had gotten offers of support into Marstad last phase, I believe, from Portugal. Portugal offered me support into Marstad last fall, and I refused. So that was interesting. Let's see what other stuff is happening.
So what did that have to do with Marstad? You said?
Oh, just in terms of like the whole like +7 thing or whatever. I'm also asking for the Dutch to build an army in Marstad and not a fleet here, which they oblige, and I'm happy that that's happening. Because I view a fleet Marstad as basically an Africa unit, and the Dutch don't build in Africa. Woo! And England builds Army Cormonton, so it's all just what we expect.
Yeah.
But
France
still
disbands
great.
Mali.
Yeah, I didn't know that was happening. That's fine. Portugal rebuilds the fleet in Moravia, which is also fine. I'm also very happy that they have these fleets stuck here, so they can't build their own future. So that's like, great. Like I love the stalemate line that's happening between Adran and Portugal here.
This is so fucking entrenched.
Yeah, and
it's
a big
terrible.
part of this is like I'm basically coordinating Adran's moves every phase and Portugal's moves every phase, so I know how the board's going to look, and it looks great for me.
Yeah. You really sneak into the back line there.
Yeah.
That'd be really
But
good.
basically, like just to summarize, I love my position here because Portugal and the Dutch are in a death war. Adran and Portugal are in a death war, and I'm the best ally to all three of them.
And England and the Dutch are in death war too.
Yeah, they're not so much in a death war, but they're definitely in a war.
Yeah. It's
Yeah,
big war
okay.
for sure, though.
And something else that's interesting to note is as soon as Dutch doesn't build in Africa, Fernando Po is already guaranteed. Like, there's nothing Fernando that Dutch can do now to cover Fernando Po. I can guarantee Fernando Po here, no matter what the Dutch does.
Yeah,
I can just
actually.
walk into Gulf of
That's
Guinea
probably why
and
you didn't
Moengo.
want Great Art.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was fine with the army build there. I don't think there's. I mean, I'd still rather they don't, but and they didn't have. We're at the phases like after the first winter, people don't have enough builds to put down things everywhere. So I
Yeah.
was pitching with I think what I was talking about earlier. Like they have 3 units here and 5 centers. That means they have a regional +2 that they can use literally anywhere else on the board, which is great.
Yeah.
Yep. And they don't need Mandara. Forget about Mandara. I'm just ignoring Mandara exists and that I have promised Mandara to them because they're busy with England, and that's fine. Their friend has a thought. What's wrong with that? Um, the great thing about Kongo having such basic builds also is like, no matter what you do, no one's gonna really interpret it as a winter stab. Like, okay, Kongo put down 3 armies in a fleet. Like, this doesn't look hostile towards anyone in particular.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is true.
It is kind of boring though.
It is. Not much to talk about in winter, besides other
About
people's
myself anyway.
builds.
It's all just what I'm convincing other people to do. So yeah, I have a lot of decisions here though. At the same time, I'm very nervous because my position is very good, and it's like I'm about to have to make some major stabs on Dutch Adran in Portugal. I can't delay it forever. I have to make decisions.
Yeah.
Although I think my decision on the Adran Portugal front is a little bit clear, which is that I kind of want to make moves on Adran here. They're my less ideal than my neighbors. And then I want to at least do some sort of fake stabber thing with the Dutch. Oh, so as soon as these winter goes through, making Fernando Po impossible to defend, I now go to Dutch and I'm like, hey, could we trade Fernando Po to me? Because I didn't want to freak them out before the winter resolved and like have them build and like want to fight me. And basically my decision is, do I want to full stab the Dutch here because they're not willing to give me Fernando Po and I want Fernando Po and I can guarantee Fernando Po. So do I want to full stab them and send all my units that way, or like a lot of my units that way? Or are they going to just agree to give me Fernando Po and I can just take it and like I don't have to go for an actual attack on them? And the pitch is like it gives me the safety to full commit against Portugal, Adron, and Abyssinia. Like I have to go east against all 3 other people. I want to ensure you're not going to drop down 2 builds and come after me. That's kind of the justification. And they're the top board as well, so it seems a bit more legitimate. Of like, hey, you're doing super well. You can afford to drop Fernando Po here. And as long as we never actually go to real war, this is a good trade for you. Like, yeah, you're going -1, but I need to keep up with you on the VSEC, and I want to be able to full commit east. And like, even if they're not super happy about that, again, I can just force it. So they probably want to agree anyway. Yeah, I don't know. What would you think about that offer from the Dutch perspective?
Like giving up dots,
No, you don't.
especially my own. Well, okay. After Saffron, I don't. Because before Saffron, I was very much willing to. But I think I learned a pretty important lesson in that game that we'll get into later, eventually.
Yeah.
But I do not think that giving up dots of your own is a good idea pretty much ever.
Yeah, but so Kongo comes to you and says, "Hey, can I have Fernando Po?" Are you just gonna say no?
Yeah, I'm going to say no.
Or so, and then what moves would you input? Just friendly Kongo moves and just assume that they won't stab you?
I'd ask for a bounce somewhere, I think. I don't even
Where?
know. This is hmm. Okay, wait a minute. I'm thinking about this for a second. Congo has a huge you have a huge like grasp over the Dutch here.
Yep.
Like the Dutch can hardly fight you. They have 2 fleets in the entire Atlantic and they're stuck fighting Portugal right now.
Hmm.
I I think I'd have to say yes, but if you move to Gulf of Guinea, then it's Death War.
Got it.
I don't.
Actually, in fact, I put this in a trade or offer meme format. So it was you get Ouagadougou, Cormentine, Portugal disbanding, England disbanding, control over South Atlantic Ocean. I get Fernando Po, Portugal disbanding, England disbanding, control over South Atlantic Ocean. So I think the deal here was I want Fernando Po, but I'm going to offer you support into Cormentine and help you take Ouagadougou. That was the full pitch.
I see. It's not just a trade for nothing. There is dots.
Yes.
Gotcha.
And I would be sending Angola Basin up to Gold Coast and Sao Tome up to Gulf of Guinea.
I see. Okay. I can see that. Yeah.
But I send this press fully intending to take Fernando Po either in peace or commit to a full stab on the Dutch and force it. And by a full stab, I mean it really wouldn't change my moveset that much. I'm going to move my army to Luango probably either way, and my fleet to Gulf of Guinea either way.
So you colored it in, so it's yours.
Exactly. And I can just rotate it to Mandara. It's fine. Fortunately, Dutch agrees. Dutch is like, cool, yeah, you can have Fernando Po, and I'll take Cormentine and stuff, and Ouagadougou, and we're both happy. And then I also make a request of Ogeron here. And Ogeron agrees as well. I'm trying to remember what that was. I think it was. Oh, maybe this is later. Maybe this is in retreats. So we'll get to Ogeron in a second.
Yeah, I think it was later.
I'm also preparing to take Delagoa this spring, which might be strange after I'm just talking about how much I love Portugal and I want Portugal to be my game-long ally, which is true. I want my game-long ally to not have the ability to put down 3 units and stab me. So this is another kind of like sneaky-ish thing where Portugal has agreed to give me Delagoa and Burrows at some point. But I'm not going to say I'm walking into Delagoa this spring. I really wanted to. I anguished over this decision because I trusted Portugal a lot at this point. But from a tactical perspective, if I walk into Delagoa this spring and Portugal knows about it, they can just bounce me. And there's really nothing I can do about it. But if I walk in and they're not expecting it and I get in, then I'm in the position to do everything I want. And there's a bunch of reasons why I thought I could probably talk my way out of it. Just with like how my press has been going with Portugal so far, how well we're doing it, the fact that they had already offered me Delagoa at some point, and the fact that, hey, I moved in the spring so we could have a conversation afterwards, and there's tactical reasons I had to do that, and now we can have conversations, and if they go a particular way, like I'm willing to just walk out. That was, I think, true to a certain extent. I was willing to walk out under certain circumstances, but I still wanted to take Delagoa. Again, less for the dot and more because I don't want that core to be there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting you did
trade it for
that.
like Cape Co or something.
It's interesting that you did it that way with Portugal, but not that way with the Dutch. So I guess it's because Delagoa is not guaranteed, while Fernando Po is.
Yes, that's exactly why. It's because of tactical reasons. And my preference is almost always to treat it the way I did with the Dutch, which I almost always tell stuff like unless I'm going to get absolutely tactically screwed over by a person knowing my order set, I'm going to tell them my order set and like try to convince them it's a good idea.
Yeah.
Especially someone I see as my game-long ally. This is, I think, one of the only times I go for a surprise move on Portugal, basically, for a very long time.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I assume this is you're moving to Matamba, moving to Lundaluba. Are you supporting, or are you backfilling Mongo?
Yeah,
And
am I
moving to
stabbing
Luba?
Ogeron this spring?
Yeah.
I think I am. I think finally I'm stabbing Ogeron this spring. I think I'm supporting Portugal into Makua, if I remember correctly. I'm walking into Lundaluba, and I'm walking into... Am I walking into Bunyoro? I don't think I walk into Bunyoro, because I think I'm also stabbing the Dutch this spring. How am I doing this? I might be walking into Bunyoro.
I feel like you are, right?
I think I am. I think I'm moving Mongo into Bunyoro. I'm doing some weird stuff where I'm like slight stabbing in a bunch of directions. I think I moved Mapemba to Lundaluba. Pango goes to Banda. Mongo goes to Bunyoro, something like that.
And to cover.
Yeah, because I want it for the Dutch front. Or maybe I don't, because the Dutch agrees, actually. So maybe I send it to Mongo instead.
Yeah.
I don't know. I do something like that. There's a lot of
your North Army that covers Mandara.
Yeah, but I kind of want to be in Banda anyway to cover Mandara because I'm supporting Fernando Po, and I want to be in Banda for Azon's stuff, and like it's just a good flexible place to be. Banda is. Then the Abyssinia front is also interesting here. So Ottomans is asking me for support into Hawara. I don't want to give that to them because that helps them just kill Abyssinia faster, and that's the opposite of what I want.
Abyssinia
Um,
also got back Mekele pretty well there.
yeah,
That's pretty impressive.
I'm giving Abyssinia tactics advice. Unfortunately, like we mentioned previously, they're a bit checked out at this point, and they're not going to take a lot of it. And they're going to make some tactical errors that let Ottomans get more off of them than they otherwise should. In fact, I think Abyssinia just straight up wins from this perspective, especially with Kongo help. If all the tactics are played well, and I think they also get unlucky on some cases, but there's definitely some mistakes that'll happen here. Let's see. But yeah, anyway, basically I'm giving Abyssinia tactical advice, and I'm in a three-way chat with Ottomans and Portugal, and I'm pretending to be on side with Ottomans, mostly because Portugal and Ottomans are working together against Spain. Oh, this is our funny Iberia look. If we look over at Iberia.
Oh.
They stab by walking all over, and then the immediate following winter phase, they take 2 off, and Portugal builds 2 armies.
That's really funny, actually.
Probably the worst Iberia stab I've ever seen. Because they provoked Portugal, who's probably never going to build 2 armies, or even considering building armies there, into building 2 armies, and then immediately disband.
Yeah, I think Ligurian Sea and Occitania would be the two that I'd disband here.
Well, and even if they didn't disband it, it's not like they were really in a great position to fight Portugal, because like they're in Galicia and stuff, but like you really need to be in Merida and Seville
Yeah.
and stuff if you actually want to make good progress.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Oof.
Yep, a lot of Portugal-Dutch war.
Yeah.
No surprises.
She's got an army in Australia and in Pond to Sea.
Spain's disbanding in Oceania, which makes me sad because now they have, what, 4 dots there with 2 fleets, and Spain's just clearly going to die at this point. They've made a lot of mistakes around the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really does look like these two are at war.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure this is all fake stab stuff, which is interesting.
I don't know. They were at war and then they changed their mind.
I think from post game, that's what I thought too, and that's kind of what they told other people. But from post game, I think we know that it was all fake, which is pretty wild.
That is really weird. Huh. Anyways, your moves.
Yep.
We want to look at them?
Moves. Yeah, we can look
So
at
you
them.
move into Delico. I think you talked about all of everything. Except South 5. What's that doing?
Probably backfilling Cape Co, because Cape Co is stabbing for Delico. Would be my guess. Yeah, and so is going to Angola Basin to cover St. Helena. Or South 5 is doing something with South America, but I was still trying to stay neutral there. Because I don't want to piss off either the Dutch or Portugal that much.
Yeah.
And I don't value taking Maristad that much.
Yeah, that's fair.
Cool.
Let's look.
Oh, no, that's what South 5 is doing. I completely forgot. I should have taken notes on that. Yeah.
Oh, yes, this.
Yeah,
I
this
remember
we've
now.
been talking about this since very early in the game. Mapuche and I were talking about
this.
Amanda and Convoy. Yeah.
Mapuche,
That makes their builds make so much more sense too.
Into
Yeah.
Mandan.
Mandan.
So it was so you were. This is why you knew that it was agreed. Because you might have just known about it being a peace thing.
Yeah.
They just wanted to use their units for something, and Mapuche wanted Buenos Aires back, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. Or they just want to look like they're at war or something.
But you convoyed Mapuche into Mandan, which I think has been being talked about for ages now, and
that
was something I remembered. I should have.
Yeah, I was getting along really well with the Mapuche player. I thought it was exciting. I wanted a little bit of chaos in West Africa to continue, and not just like 1 or 2 colonials to emerge very strong in the region. They could help me break into stalemate lines. Hopefully, they'd be grateful to me later for helping convoy them. Yeah, there's a bunch of reasons and I wanted to work with them because the other thing is they don't have cores here, which makes them kind of ideal. Like I'm obviously a core hater, as we all know. I don't want minimum cores ideal. That makes it really hard for them to reinforce Africa. So if they stab later or something, they're not going to be able to bring as many units to bear.
Yeah.
Um, England, I get England and Dutch to kind of stab each other, I think. I don't remember if I exactly chose these moves or something, but I did something similar. Like I was talking them through the moves. England thinks that Mapuche and I are going to bounce on Cormentin this phase, and that was why Mapuche was convoyed over. We're gonna bounce on Cormentin, or Mapuche is gonna like take Niani or something. But yeah. So England was okay with this. Basically, everyone okayed Mandan. England okayed it. Dutch okayed it. Basically, everyone knew about it.
Imagine Portugal didn't.
I don't know if Portugal did. I didn't tell Portugal. I don't know if Portugal knew. I never told Portugal.
Yeah. This is a fun convoy, though.
Yeah, because the Dutch have stabbed England so hard, England's finally happy to go in on the Dutch, and we're talking about working together. England's asking me for support into Great Ardra, and I'm just like, no, that's not happening.
Yeah, this is a one
Great
dot.
Ardra is my dot. Thank you very much.
That would be a
England in general is
very.
asking for a lot more dots than they have any right to in West Africa, and it's making me a bit wary of them.
That'd be a wonderfully looking colony, though. Like,
Yeah.
England.
Yep.
Randomly in Africa.
Yeah. I stab Audron here.
Yep.
This is where I finally have to do some post-stab press with Audron. It was what I expected. Yeah, I do move into Banda here, which is a bit interesting. And I actually support Azande down, which is also a bit interesting. It shows that I'm very much not committing to doing anything on this Abyssinia Ottoman front and just letting them fight. I'm also coring Darfur, which is a bit interesting.
Yes.
Because I need to sit in Darfur is the problem. Because if Abyssinia gets pushed out in the fall, which is like fairly likely or something or other, I need to have a unit in Darfur just to stop the retreat. Which means I guess I need to core. I like having the core here. It's a bit aggressive. It's a bit high up. I actually don't like how close it is because it means I'm often going to have to have a unit stuck in Darfur. So I'd much rather have a core in like Azand, for example, that I can actually build out of. This is one of the few cases where I think coring this early is actually good in Imperial diplomacy because you need to have a unit stuck there and you don't actually want to do any supports or anything like that.
Yeah.
Of course, Ottoman will ask me for support in Dahora, but I'm not going to do it.
It's a good core, too.
Yeah, it's a pretty solid one. Like I said, it's a bit far up, I think. Compared to like Azand or Banda, I think is much better. But
Yeah. It's true.
and also both Abyssinia and Ottomans are definitely giving a double glance at it because I didn't run it by either of them. Not that Abyssinia has much of a right to think about anything other than surviving at this point, and but Ottomans is not super happy, I'm sure, with me doing this.
Yeah.
But I'm saying it's anti-Dutch also. That's like the pitch. Like it goes against Agates and stuff.
That is true. It does. And you do.
But I think it's too close to Abbey's home centers for Ottomans to ever be happy about this.
And it does look like you stabbed them here as well.
That's true. Yeah, like I think it has a pretty compelling story. I tend to try to tell compelling stories. Of like, hey, I'm pretty clearly going anti-Dutch here. Yeah.
A real stab on the Dutch would be moving to Cannon.
Yeah, I considered it, but again, I don't want the retreat into Darfur. We were considering arranging a bounce in Kenem Borneo for mutual safety, but decided not to and just go for the core instead.
Down here.
I stab. Yes, I do this Delagoa move, and I also stab Audron. So I have to do post-stab press with both Portugal and Adron. I had a really long thing prepped for both, especially for Delagoa, though. Again, this whole like they told me I could have Delagoa. I had to move now because they could just they could just say yes in the fall and then bounce me, and I wouldn't be able to ensure it. You can see from the rest of my moves, I'm stabbing the Dutch, I'm stabbing Ageron. I'm pretty clearly committed to working with you, but I just want this Dele go for safety, which I think is a pretty compelling pitch. I know you don't like when people take your dots, but I think you can feel like this Congo is not going to kill you as Portugal.
You also kind of don't really have any options in this position. You have no armies. So,
Exactly. Yeah.
um,
So why not just let them take the 1 dot and work with you?
it's also a taunt that you offered. So
So what I offered?
it's a dot that they offered to you. It's like,
Yes. At some point, they just didn't say it this year. Also, I had reasons why taking it this year is good, which I think is like, I think they were going to have like a mediocre year this year and they weren't going to get builds or something. So it's like, it's a good time.
so now I know what to do. If we're ever playing a game together, you offer me some centers at some point, like how you're doing with Mandara. I could just
Yeah.
stab for it. That's basically a free permit.
Potentially. The thing is, like, you probably won't get a good opportunity to, because I don't know, whatever. Like, I'm very good at checking in each phase on like what people are doing and like what moves people are saying they're doing. And if Dutch was suddenly to do like OYO to House Estates here or something, I'd be like, what's up with that? The spring phase.
Yeah.
That seems like it's stabbing for Mandara. So it's like, it's a bit late at this point because you're kind of 2 phases away from most stabs, and I'll recognize it on the first phase. Or like Portugal, for example. Like, what's Portugal going to stab for in this position? They have all fleets. They can't stab
Cape Co.
for anything besides Cape Co.
Yeah. Which
Let's
you can
see what
cover
else is
here.
interesting here.
No.
Yeah, I'm doing press with Ageron, and it's like, hey, I want to work with you, but Portugal's been so good to me here, and you did some things that we did not agree to. Like, you built a southern army without telling me after I asked you not to, and your split decisions. Yeah, I
You
talked a
asked
little bit
more
about the
for.
splits early.
I,
Um,
I love these reasons.
the
You
split discussions. Yeah, yeah.
you
Um,
asked for more in the split, and you
yeah,
built an army against your
yeah.
enemy.
The split, the split was the split they offered was actually an Ageron 15 split, Congo 12 split, which um, was again way too ineffective. But I was like, hey, I like walked into Delagoa and stuff. I'm clearly willing to go anti-Portugal here, but I just need you. And like, there's a bunch of reasons why I want to be anti-Portugal. Like, they have these 3 cores, and they're colonial, and they're doing well elsewhere. And like, if you want to, like, I'm not sure if you can impunity from here. I'm fine if you want to impunity, and we'll see that in a second. But you can definitely survive as like a 6 to 15 center regional power around the Indian Ocean, right? Like, you can just have a bunch of fleets there. I'm never going to walk over to Madagascar and claim it. So you can take all Madagascar, you can take Arabia stuff, you can take India stuff, like Sumatra, like whatever you can get your hands on. That's all fine by me. And I'm never going to take any of that or kill that or whatever. And I'll help you against Portugal. But what I need you to do what Portugal did, which is take all your armies off of Africa. No armies. Only purple hexagons. There's a joke I was trying. I never really used it in press at all, but like just like the cult of the purple hexagons. This idea of like there are only going to be purple hexagons in Africa. No one else gets armies in Africa. Um, and I was doing a pretty good job of that. About as good
Yeah.
a job as Congo could ever hope.
Yeah, you're doing great so far.
Specifically in getting rid of every army on the continent. um, But yeah, so I wanted them to take Makua off in retreats, and then I would support myself into Burundi, and they would take Burundi off in retreats. That was what I was asking them to do.
Yeah.
Yep.
That makes sense.
Is there anything else we want to talk about moves wise? I think that's most of it. Something that's interesting here is that since they didn't go to cover Fernando Po, I have actually more options in terms of what I want to do against the Dutch. Specifically, I can convoy here, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah,
So I can convoy into like Great Ardra potentially,
you can
or
convoy into
whatever.
Benin here.
Or I can walk into one of the. I can actually 2 dot them here, and it's guaranteed. I can walk into Benin and Fernando Po.
Yeah.
which is what England's asking me to do. It's 2 dot stab them or support England into Great Ardra.
The 2 guaranteed dot stab. That's pretty good.
Yeah. But of course, in
You don't
my
have, you don't
usual
have,
fashion, I'm
you
not going
don't.
to take it.
Also, you just don't have enough cores.
Yep, exactly. I'm already at my 4. I'm
Which
taking
is
Banyoro, Burundi, Delagoa, and Fernando Po. That already gets me to 4.
yeah. So you don't need Benin right now.
I do not need Benin. It would put me at 5. Of course, Portugal wants me to walk out of Delagoa and take Benin. And I kind of am having a hard time justifying not doing that.
Oh yeah, this.
Oh yes. Is this? Oh, this is the Dutch. Oh yeah. So immediately after I stabbed the Dutch, I already had prepared from last fall retreats. You can actually see an impunity map to show the Dutch, and this is my 32 dots. At least what I'm saying to the Dutch that my 32 dots are, and I'm showing, hey, I need to take Fernando Po. Maybe actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I probably sent this to them before to convince them that I needed Fernando Po. Actually, now that I'm thinking about this.
Yeah.
But yeah, I need Fernando Po. And it's just interesting to look at. Like, this is kind of what I would need to win.
Yeah.
Or be one of the winners.
You colored Fort Dauphin? You did.
I did.
Sneaky little dot there.
Yep. I actually think this is fairly unrealistic, and I'm more
Oh
likely to take
yeah.
more from the Dutch.
I feel like Fort Dauphin or Sangali, Obio, those seem really unrealistic. I don't know. I mean, not like super unrealistic. It's just like
Yeah,
much more a pain
ideally, I
in the
probably
ass
should get
than Benin.
something out of West Africa or South America.
Yeah,
I agree.
like they.
I don't remember if this is exactly 32. It might be slightly above 32 too. I think one of the impunity maps I sent was actually like 34 or something. So this might be 34. I don't know. But yeah, it's around what I would need.
Yeah,
And I could always like grab like Marstad or something else that the Dutch gives me. Because that was kind of the expectation is like, yeah, like if I'm near 32 and you're saying I can't go anywhere in West Africa, then you're going to need to give me dots. And that was kind of just the expectation. I'm not even necessarily from the Dutch, but like support me into something in South America or whatever. We will not get that far.
yeah.
Let's see.
The
Yes,
next
this is the map I
thing.
sent to the Dutch, and then that's retreats.
Yeah, this
Oh,
is the
so
cat
Hadron
retreat.
does retreat to Kismayo. Was I okay with that? Was that
Well,
something
no,
I'd be
this
okay
is
with?
the options.
Oh, options, right? Okay, yeah. Oh, they don't have it Burundi. Yeah, but Burundi retreats in the fall. So yeah, I'm trying to convince them to take Makua off,
Yeah,
which I think is actually the right move here. And this again gets to the weird thing where it's like, I don't think Adron at this point basically has an escape point. Really after fall 1, like where they stab Portugal and bounce them out of Burundi. I'm not sure if there's ever a point where it's good for Burundi for Adron to stab me or like fight me. Maybe actually after fall 1, if they can convince Portugal to be back on side and build armies and stab me with something like the 4 army plan. But really after that first year, it seems really rough because Portugal is clearly committing hard against them.
yeah,
And realistically, like even if they assume that Kongo and Portugal are just going to stab them no matter what they do, I think giving up all the armies and just becoming an INO fleet power is probably the best way to survive. Like because I can't reach anything beyond their home centers.
yeah.
They're not going to defend their home centers long term against Portugal and Congo. So again, it's giving someone a pitch that's like reasonable and makes sense and works, and especially it works regardless of whether or not you're stabbing them or like working with them. So it's like if I am working with you, this is great, and you get to be a 15 center, maybe more INO power. If I'm not working with you, well, you're probably not going to do as great. You're probably going to be like a 6 center INO power, but like you can maybe survive in the ocean. Regardless, disband the armies, become a fleet power, and do the things. And I am truthfully still just like happy with. I don't really care who controls Madagascar because it won't be me. And in fact, I
Yeah.
probably don't want it to be Portugal because that means Portugal's bigger and scarier.
Yeah, I think you like France being in control of it right now.
Yeah, that's also true. I like this defensive mess around it. Certainly, I like that it's not consolidated. Similarly with West Africa.
Yeah. Now that Mapuche's there, it's even more. But get even more crazy.
Exactly. What happened in the fall actually with that? Or actually, we haven't seen fall moves yet.
Yeah,
Never mind.
no, we're waiting. We can go to the retreat.
I think I know what I think I know what I'm doing
Yeah,
there.
because
But,
this is the map that you sent Ajran.
oh, the other reason that Pango to Banda was interesting was I was saying that Pango to Banda rather than Sangha was pro-Dutch. In terms of like I wasn't full stabbing them, and I also was saying that Azande to not to Banda but south was also pro-Dutch, like Azande to Benoro or something.
Hmm.
And then also that I moved to Gold Coast to support them into Corentin, but I didn't put a second fleet into South Atlantic because that could threaten them. So it's a bunch of like, hey, I looked at what the full stab order set on you would be, and I didn't do all these things. I kind of point out to Dutch.
Yeah. But here's the Ajran.
Yes, this is the Ajuran impunity map that I'm giving to Ajuran. So I'm like, hey, you can still reach your impunity here potentially. You probably won't, but like realistically, you could at least be like a 15 center regional and end on like a mid
Okay.
board placement.
So that answers my question of did Ajran actually believe you with
I don't know if they
this?
did. I mean, again, I wasn't saying like you're gonna
Because
hit 32, because yeah, hitting 32 from here is hard,
this is
but it's not
all
theoretically
the way
impossible.
teamwork floors. Like they have Mecca and Cairo.
Yeah,
Uh,
they could. I don't see why they couldn't take Mecca and Cairo, because if we assume I'm in
I
an
want to
armies up
see a
there,
game where Ajran has Cairo. I would love to see that.
um, they're closer to it than I am. That's
I just don't know if I've seen it before.
I think in a dominant Ajuran game, it's actually fairly common. Although I just haven't seen that many dominant Ajuran games, to be fair.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I've
it's
seen a
none of
lot
my
of
games.
Ajrans in India though. It's always fun to see when
Yeah.
another country doesn't
Yeah, I
start.
mean, this isn't super high effort. It's just like, here's a bunch of dots you can take around INO. And I think a lot of these are actually pretty doable. Uh,
Yeah. Your dots are all of West Africa.
yep. And we can duel.
Seems pretty easy to get, relatively, except maybe these.
Yep.
Alrighty, let's look at the treat, which is a disband. They listened.
Yeah. Audron's on my side. Woo.
Yeah. Very nice.
At this point, something just like doing a little bit more board looking. England and Poland are hard allies, and they're killing Sweden together. And this
Yeah.
England-Poland alliance is starting to scare me a bit. If you look over at the leaderboard, that's not quite this. We'll see it more at the end of the year.
Yeah, let's follow those through. I think you'll
Yeah,
see the.
but they're doing very well together, and they're very close, and they're a very strong alliance. And this scares me a bit. I don't think I do it right away, but very soon I propose a four-way impunity with England, Poland, Austria, and I. Because the other thing is there's a really strong Poland-Austria alliance, and all three of them get along pretty well. I get along really well with Austria, and I've been, for the most part, working with England and Poland to lesser extents, just like talking about like West Africa and stuff. I certainly haven't stabbed them or done anything that they disliked, and they think I'm working with them against the Dutch and stuff, so they like me. And I'm proposing this four-way impunity. I'm very worried about an England-Poland duo impunity, especially because if they both approach their VSCC, they're going to have nearly 100 units between the two of them, because they're both larger countries, and they're going to have complete control over the North Atlantic Ocean, and they're going to be able to push into the South Atlantic Ocean.
Yeah,
Because if you see
because
as well,
Poland's
they're
over
taking over
here
the Caribbean
and over
entirely.
here.
Yeah, they're going to completely destroy the Caribbean and take all the dots there, from what I can see.
Yeah.
Like there's a dying France there and a small one core Dutch in their way.
Yeah.
And after they finish the Caribbean, they're just going to have like a ton of fleets that they can just send to South Atlantic, and I really want them on my side when that happens. I also want Austrian impunity, both because I like them a lot and we have a great relationship, but also so they can be a check on Poland. Because if Austria is strong, then Poland can't like stab Austria and go crazy and either like solo or help England duo at a very high VSCC. So it'd slow the England Poland's ability to pull away and duo at a really high VSCC, especially because Austria is already really high themselves, and they can help manage the VSCC band. The VSCC band being, they would have to get 35% ahead of Austria on the victory condition, but because Austria is doing so well, that's pretty hard for them to do.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Also, Austria can help me with autos, and I see myself fighting Ottomans at some point. Because we're having some disagreements now about, not very aggressively, but Ottomans keeps asking me for supports, and I'm continually denying them, and I keep asking them for certain things, and they're denying me. For example, I think actually this winter, I didn't mention it, but I think I asked them not to build an army in Cairo, and they built an army in Cairo. I'm not happy about them having 4 armies here. That's too many. As we know, I have the cult of the purple hexagons, and I'm okay with some believers in other hexagon faiths, but not to this extent.
Funny.
Yeah, too much army Africa investment, because those armies, as soon as Abyssinia dies, I am their only choice, really.
Yeah. Bergeron's going to be out of the way too.
Yep.
Do we want to go to what? It would be fall, yes. Yeah.
I think something else that's interesting. If you look over at India, did anything interesting happen here? Can you look at the moves real quick? Spring moves.
Go back a bit.
Not quite yet. No. Okay. Well, soon enough, England's coming for Portugal, and I think this is already very suspicious, actually. And I think I was like already telling Portugal, "Hey, England's gonna come for you." Yeah.
Because they
Yeah.
didn't do what Portugal asked.
Exactly, and you see the way Mughals moving in a very pro-England way, and even moving back down to Rajama Hendry, it just screams Portugal. England's going to stab you, Portugal. So I warn them of that.
Yeah.
Because I'm scared of England at this point. England's going to be the board leader probably, and Portugal's not doing too hot. And at this point, Portugal's my chosen ally. I want them to do well, and I want them to do well in other regions. But now we can move down to fall.
Yeah.
Most of my press goes well. Portugal was more miffed about Delago than I was hoping. Yes, I do something very funny that you zoomed in on. Sorry.
Sorry, I wanted to focus on it because
Yeah, I do this.
seems really interesting.
So Mapuche was originally convoyed over to Nyani, and I'm even getting Dutch support into core Edmonton here that I don't take because I would get 5 dots, and I don't want 5 dots. Instead of getting my own dot, I would rather keep Gold Coast because it's a great position to be in. And I want to give Mapuche a dot because I want to give my new friends in the region a dot and make them happy, continue to be happy with me and work with me because I really value having Mapuche on side here. Mapuche wants a dot really bad, and I also want to take away England's core. England is like board leader material or like near board leader material, and I don't want them putting a build down in West Africa every year. And I think England even tells me before this fall phase goes through that they want to build a unit in like an army in Currenton, and I'm like, no, I don't want that. Not that I say that, but instead I just decide to support Mapuche in. I think that's somewhat of a last minute decision as well. I was never considering really taking Benin here, and I wanted an excuse not to England, but eventually I think they were just kind of pushing for it a lot, so I was also just like, this also is an excuse, I guess. Dutch is obviously fairly happy with me here because I'm not stabbing the Dutch. I mean, I could just take Benin or even Great Ardra here, and I'm not doing it. So Dutch feels pretty good about me.
This move to
Timbuktu
Mandara.
Agadir's pass is kind of nice. I am walking into Mandara, yes.
And Lopez Bays is a huge red flag for me.
Yeah, I suppose it is.
That's a convoy into Benin or Great Ardra.
It is, but it's also a convoy into Mandan, so I don't know. Definitely is a convoy, though.
Yes.
Yeah, or it's a convoy into Nantes, or it's a convoy into Correnton, so I don't know. It could be, but also because I didn't walk into Benin or Great Ardra, I'd be pretty happy with me as the Dutch here. Because obviously Congo has much better stabs on you. I do walk into Mandara, though, which works out because of the way that the England and the Dutch moves happen anyway. I guess I just have to cover Haas Estates for you now, Dutch.
Yeah.
No one else can do that for you, so I mean, I guess I just have to. I don't even think I coordinated what England's move here was. I think I asked the Dutch to tap Timbuktu, but they probably would have done it anyway because they're at war with England. I I don't think England told me that they're moving to Agadir, but yeah, it works out. If we look over at Abyssinia, we see Abyssinia.
Poland tried to
Oh, sorry.
support the Dutch into Portugal.
Yep, Poland is fighting Portugal. That's not super surprising at this point. There's a Cabo Verde bounce because Dutch and Portugal are fighting over there too.
Yeah, let's.
Abyssinia's a little bit absentee. I'm not sure. No, actually, these tactics don't look terrible. I don't remember. There's a point at which Abyssinia's tactics get pretty bad. I guess this is like fairly. This is fairly bad actually. I don't know why they're not covering Aden here. They just kind of lose a dot. They let Ottomans take 2 dots, 3 dots actually. Kind of wild. This is the first red flag I think where Abyssinia was like starting to fall off tactically, in terms of how much they were paying attention to the game.
It's not really great.
No, it's
Oh,
not.
and Ottomans got Mara.
Yeah, that's what I'm
Mara,
talking about.
Aden,
Yeah.
or Sangali, and Axum.
Yeah.
Sheesh. Ottomans is
Yeah.
doing good. Oh,
Yeah.
never mind. They're not.
No, they're not. Austria's doing really well. And Poland's also going for Ottomans, you can see.
Okay, they're not doing too terrible. It's just
Yeah, but I mean, Poland's also
Austria's
coming
whooping
up.
their ass.
So is Poland.
So is Poland, yes.
Yeah.
Ooh.
And Russia's also. I guess Russia's working with them for now, but Russia's piecing out Poland, which also isn't good for them. So.
Yeah.
And there's Safavids at this point. After Ottomans stabbed Safavids just decided to dedicate the rest of their life to becoming a Mughal vassal and all-inning Ottomans.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting.
They're in a pretty good position.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and we'll get to this later, but something that's interesting to me about this, I think, is like you could probably see this as a throw to Mughals, just like fully vassalizing to Mughals and letting Mughals take all your dots, which will slowly happen over time while all-inning Ottomans. It's just because it's not happening when the game is ending. A lot of people don't necessarily think of it as a throw. But yeah. Let's see.
Let's move
yeah, looking around the rest of the map. This is arranged with Adjaran. Adjaran wanted to make sure I wasn't in Kismayo, which is totally fair. So we did this arranged bounce in Kismayo and blow up Burundi.
That would have been fun. Though they probably don't want you. Yeah.
Yeah, they don't want me in Kismayo.
They do. Seems like Portugal's not too upset about this whole situation. It looks
no,
like.
I mean, I don't think they were happy about me taking Delago, but again, it's like, what can they do here? And they have a lot of people on board that they're much. And another thing with like all this is like, there's a lot of people consistently that are much more upset with the other people than me. Like Portugal has much bigger issues to deal with, like the Dutch and like Adjaran and all these other people who are like actually full committing against them to deal with this one Delago move. Yeah.
Oh, Mapuche's in South Atlantic Ocean now.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they told me about this. Yeah. I just want to know what they're doing. I think as long as I know that, I'm fine. Portugal goes up to Canary Basin. Cool. That's fine. Portugal fully gives up on South America here too. It's kind of like what's starting to happen here.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Sending this South Atlantic fleet away, and the Dutch joining in on this Guarani massacre. Makes sense. I'm also very unhappy about it because it means that Portugal can still get to the impunity at this point, but it's becoming much harder. And it also means that they're going to want more in Africa because their 2 best colonies right now are West Africa and East Africa, in part because I'm working with them so closely. They're really struggling everywhere else. They're also doing well in Europe, yeah, because of the way the Iberia mess happened.
Madrid.
Yep.
I don't know. But they're giving everything up to Ottomans.
But if you look at like Asia, it's not going so well for them over in Oceania, and they lose Hainan as well. Oh yeah, and India's about to go bad as well. But like if you look at Hainan, I think they just lost it. Yep. They did take Formosa, which is kind of neat, but they have no claim over that. Tokugawa can take it whenever. And they're losing Oceania entirely, which is also very terrifying. So starting to not feel so great about Portugal impunity, entirely for factors not to do with Africa, which kind of becomes important later. Like Portugal's doing great in Africa and terrible almost everywhere else.
If I'd consider this great in Africa, but
Yeah, great in Africa.
this is pretty solid.
Yeah, they have an amazing West Africa colony. I mean, they're still like pretty high on the leaderboard, and if you look at what colonies are doing well, it's the African ones. Yeah, third on the leaderboard. Yep. Well, I mean, that's before this year results, though.
Yeah.
What else did I say here? England was obviously pretty pissed. This is one of my first like big full stabs of the game. Is this stab on England really? Obviously was trying to be nice afterwards, but it really changed our relationship. Sadly, I was basically just saying that yeah, I don't want you to have the core really, which they were not thrilled about.
Yeah. That makes sense.
And they also wanted too many builds in West Africa for my impunity requirements, like just in terms of what I need. Like, yeah, I was just a bit unhappy with England. Like some of the stuff I use, I'm looking at my post-stab justification. It's like they hadn't offered me a single center in West Africa that I couldn't already take. So their deal in terms of how we split the Dutch was they get Great Ardra, I get Benin and Fernando Po, and I think they get House Estates and Agadir or something, which is just like what? Or maybe they offered me House Estates. I don't know. But again, it's like no, realistically, I can take like all 5 of these Dutch dots pretty easily here. So if you're going to offer something like that and build units to try to guarantee something like that, I'm not going to be very happy.
Yeah.
Because you're offering me stuff like Benin that I already have guaranteed. It's like it's not you're not helping me get anything I couldn't get already. Which if you're not offering me anything, you're not giving me a whole lot of a reason not to stab you, especially because you can't retaliate if I take Cormonton. So yeah, but it's still sad. I didn't really want to stab England because I'm scared as heck of England right now. This England and Poland alliance.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh my
Sweden is super good.
goodness.
Yeah, very good
Oh
convoy.
wow.
The Poland convoy into Narva with support. Very
Sweden
clever.
is
Tactically.
dead. That's
If you see the Narva convoy, it's really I really like that one.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah, it's amazing tactically too, because Riga can't get cut. So
Technically, it can get
it can get
supported into.
dislodged.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Which would be
but
very
it's also
devastating.
yeah.
And
I
they
probably
can
would have put
just
Tap on Baltic or something, but
support into Narva normally. But it's
can they?
not
I mean, if
great.
they want to put the fleet in there, they can. Yeah.
Anyways, hmm. Oh, it's just an range bounce, I think. A lot of interesting
The
stuff.
other interesting thing about the Mapuche support in Quarantine is it came like 2 hours before the phase. Oh, the other reason I did it was, and the other reason I was so wary of this Poland-England thing is I'm hearing rumors at this point that I'm pretty sure are true that England and Poland are trying to coalition me, and they're kind of backing out of our 4-way impunity thing. And I'm like, hey, I want the 4-way impunity, but everything I hear about is the two of you trying to like push people against me, and from my perspective, and obviously this ends up not being necessarily the case, but from my perspective, I think England and Poland are in a much stronger position than I am as a duo. Like if you just say just England or just Poland, assuming that they're not allies, I agree that Congo is in a better position here. But if you think about this Congo-England relationship that seems pretty unbreakable and they won't stab, I think they're in a much better position in terms of like actually duoing or winning, especially because I think there will come a point in the game where, like I mentioned previously, where they can just kind of bully me with the amount of units they have. So in my perspective, they're in a stronger position than me. They're already going to be in the impunity, probably above me. So the only reason for them to try to push people against me is if they're trying to cut me out of the impunity and go for a duo impunity, because they want other people to attack me to drag down my VSCC and thus make them jumping the 35% gap easier because I'll be in a lower position. So I think that they're positioning heavily around this duo where the two of them are closer. And they're trying to push people against me. And that's part of why I make this move against England, because I'm like, okay, I'm not going to allow that to happen. And I also send that to England as a justification as well.
Yeah.
It's not even it's a mix of justification. It's a mix of just like signing my reasoning because like I want to explain like why I did the thing I did. It's not like out of malice or something. It's I am very wary that you're trying to cut me out of the impunity. If you just want to work with me and win together, then I'm happy to work with you and win together.
Yeah.
The other funny thing is this year, so I go +4. I have it in my face that I could have gone +11 this year if I had pushed hard for it.
Wow.
Which I believe would be taking Barrotes, would be taking. What else would I be taking here?
Rhodes, Burundi,
Could have taken Baido
Bunyoro,
here.
Lagoa.
Baido, I could have walked into from Bunyoro.
Oh, yeah.
I can also take Maristad again, which I don't. I could have taken Cormentin, of course. I could have taken Benin as well. So this is something ridiculous if I just wanted to grab every dot I can. Of course, I only have 4 places to build, so there's not a ton of reason to do that.
And it wouldn't push you over the threshold to solo. So.
Oh, not even close, yeah. Even if I
Yeah.
+11, I'm not even at my 100% yet. I'm currently at, after this +4, I'm at, I believe, 16 out of 32.
Yeah.
Which is getting good. It's in a good spot. People are starting to get wary of me. I'm actually more happy about my position, not because of my dot count, but more just because of the state of alliances around me and how good my relationships are. It's honestly crazy that I've gotten this far without basically ever having any enemies.
Yeah.
Because even at this point, Audron and Portugal are still just disbanding and working with me. Dutch is still working with me as I take Pernambuco. Like I've gotten all the way up to 16 dots, basically purely off of just negotiating my way into them. Which
Yeah.
I think some of the spectators were talking about in my void around this time, of like, there's just some joking going on of like, why stab people or go to war when you can just convince people to give you dots? You don't need to attack anybody. Just
The only person you've attacked is England, which you've completely
yeah,
eliminated from the region. And you
pretty
did
much.
it.
I mean, I have attacked Audron and then tried to peace out, but other than that, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's look at
We go
the.
into we get to see the new leaderboard. Oh wait, I'm on top. I didn't want that to happen. I wanted England on top. Was my first reaction.
Uh-oh.
Oh, indeed. A lot of people can be very tunnel vision, especially around this phase of the game where people are starting to actually potentially be like the top contenders are actually starting to materialize. And I am terrified of, again, England, Poland. We see second and fourth place. We see the four-way impunity looks much more clear here, like the top 4 powers that I was kind of foreseeing to be the top 4 powers. But yeah, I am not happy to be in number 1 because I think a lot of people tunnel vision on that. And I think in reality, the England and Poland duo is much more scary than I am, but it's harder to express something like that. Because even if you look at units right now, they have 50 units and I have 16. So if I ever go to war against England and Poland, I am so screwed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, sorry. Kind of sidetrack. I just noticed Ayatollah is been pretty solid.
Yeah, I also have a great relationship with Ayataya. I like the Ayataya player. We're not really coordinating as much as I'd like because I haven't invested fleets in Sakalava region at all. That was kind of part of my press strategy with Audron and Portugal, is just telling both of them basically like, I don't care about Madagascar. It's all yours. But that also means I basically don't do anything with Ayutthaya anytime soon.
Yeah.
I move into Burundi like I agreed with Audron. I'm asking them to disband it. I again do basically all arranged moves with everyone around me. Oh yeah, we already did default moves, sorry. But yeah, I'm asking Audron to disband Burundi. They do have this Mongo retreat that's kind of annoying, but again, I have 4 builds, so
Yeah.
why would they?
Let's see. Do they disband it? They do.
Yeah, I think if they were going to do the previous one, they should follow up and do this one too. So.
Yeah.
And Portugal gets a retreat into Mapondo because they're fighting. Is that France or Audron? Or is it? I actually can't tell.
That's Audron.
Audron. Interesting. Yeah, I think they were supported in there by themselves, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. By, over
Yep.
here.
But no, I'm on top of the leaderboard. I don't like that. Builds, I get to choice. Are we doing, how many armies are we doing? How many fleets are we doing? Not that many choices.
2 and 2. No. Yeah, no.
I
3
think I remember what I did
armies
here.
and 1 fleet, I think.
Yeah, I could see that. Definitely not 2 fleets here, I think, just because Lopez Bay is already covered and you already
Yeah.
have a lot of nearby fleets. And you definitely want the army in Mabanza, I think, because you're going to
Yeah.
do convoy stuff.
You're gonna. Yeah, or
So it's either
just go north.
yeah, so it's either 3 and 1, or I think I actually do I might do 4 armies here. I don't think I do though. I think it's 3 and 1 with the fleet and Soyo.
Is there any builds you want to see out of these?
Out of people,
Yeah.
I don't know if the Dutch is building this year. If they are, I don't want them building anything other than an army and probably nothing ideally, but they'll probably want to build an army there, and I'm probably okay with that. I don't think Audron is building. I think we mathed it precisely so that Audron would not build. They go +0 here. They do stab and get Muscat or something, which is neat, but which you'll notice actually Portugal's completely lost that colony now. But I don't know what I wanted Audron to do. But I think they have 0 builds, so it's fine. I don't want Portugal building an army as usual. I think I'm okay with Fleet Moravi, but I'd rather they build elsewhere. Oh, and we didn't look at it in India, but Portugal's losing India as well. So at this point, I'm starting to think, okay, Portugal's not going to win and get the impunity. They're losing almost all their colonies except Africa.
Well,
They basically have lost everything except, yeah, they have Europe and Africa, and they're 2 Africa colonies. That's basically
so many units around the. That's not looking at all.
No, yeah. Although who knows, Spain might take some off because they're probably disbanding. What other stuff? Yeah, I mean, I'm talking every year to Portugal and Dutch about builds and trying to help coordinate and stuff.
Yeah.
I'm also talking to Mapuche about builds. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I had any major asks. I'll probably be reminded once I see winter.
Let's see it.
Okay, 3 and 1 was right. Portugal doesn't build near me. Great. Oh, I do help negotiate Dutch disbands, so I remember getting Dutch to disband in Seawart now. That was something I had said. Because I wanted Portugal to be able to help on Poland here. And I also just thought it wasn't very useful.
Yeah, makes sense.
These disbands from Abyssinia were really weak, if I remember correctly, and they caused a lot of problems.
That fleet is. I don't know. Yeah.
Maybe I'm thinking about the wrong phase, but again, yeah, there's just a lot of fear with Abyssinia here, where I feel like Abyssinia is just going to cause their own position to collapse, and I don't like that. It's a really weird position because I want Abyssinia to be doing better, and I'm giving them advice most phases, but at this point, I think they're just not checking their messages and they're just inputting whatever moves on they see on first look. And after the game, I kind of got that impression as well.
Yeah. Shame.
Shame indeed. And they're also, I don't know if it got this bad this early, but eventually it would come to the point where like you'd basically like they'd go down from 1 sentence a phase to like you can't reach them for several phases or whatever. They're just like so absentee. And at that point, I wish they would have just subbed out, but they did not. Okay.
Moves.
Yeah, I guess so. There's not a lot to talk about in this winter.
I've been curious this whole time. What's your plan with this army in Baza? Are you doing the stab
Oh,
on
I'm
the
very
Dutch?
friendly and not going to stab the Dutch at all. No, there was a lot of conversation about this in the spring phase. Game is also starting to get really hard. People are very much overrating me, in my view, as a long-term threat. I think a lot of people were saying I'm a solo threat now. I'm gonna go +9 this year. I'm gonna win the game in 2 years, I think was what some people were saying. Or actually, no, maybe that's a bit later. But yeah, people were pushing like I'm a solo threat, I'm gonna win. England and Poland were especially pushing this. I had a lot of counter propaganda I was spreading. I did a bunch of VSCC math where I think England is probably going around +7 this year. And if people think I'm going to outpace England by 35%, that would have me hitting 92% VSCC this year, which would have me going +14. So if people thought I was going to outpace England, they would expect me to go +14 pace this year. Tell me with a straight face that I'm going +14 this year. No. So just kind of arguing against this whole like Kongo's going to solo thing, which at this point I think is ridiculous. There's like points in this game where you could maybe point it out, but like I think at this point I'm like a couple VSCC percentage points ahead of England. Like England's right behind me.
Yeah.
And they're going +7 at least, or like some amazing number this year, because if you look over at North America, they're doing amazing, and like the Caribbean, they still have all these dots to take off of a dying France, and that are pretty much uncontested. Like they're getting dots like Philadelphia for sure.
I guess I'm honestly impressed that France has been staying up for this long. Like, I
Yeah,
feel
it's
like
kind of odd, honestly. Yeah,
England had Villa Marie like at the very start. And they
I'm
lost.
not sure what's up with that. I haven't been
Like
following the news.
technically, I think they've gained nothing. England has gained nothing against France. Maybe Seneca. Maybe Seneca, but
Port Royal.
Port Royal, they lost Katoba. Like that, what they've gained is from the Dutch and Spain.
Yeah, potentially.
Like a lot of Spain down here.
What about Europe? Oh
Nothing.
wow, France is pretty decent though too. Um, Even an English channel. Well, though, to be fair, that's because the Dutch and England have gone to war now. So yeah.
Yeah, it's just England's not really gaining.
Pretty happy with Otto's builds. I think this. I don't know if it's now. No, I don't think it's now yet. Uh, Ottomans will sub out in around a year or two, like somewhere soon.
Hmm.
But I don't think it's quite yet. But I'm happy to see fleets in the mud.
Yeah. Has stuff happened with these three?
They're working together, and that's more clear at this point. There's a South American regional triple.
Gotcha.
Yep, I'm working pretty closely with Mapuche, friendly relationship with Guarani, friendly relationship with Aymara. I'm occasionally inquiring with Aymara and Mapuche, not very uncommonly, honestly, like once every couple of years, of just like, hey, are you looking to stab Guarani? Not saying that you should, or even suggesting that I want you to, but like, if you're going to, could you let me know, basically? Um,
Yes.
but it's still a bit too early. I'm not really considering that much right now because I'm busy with the Dutch, and I don't have a South Atlantic Ocean fleet.
Yeah.
Um, let's see.
Probably gonna want to free Darfur up this year. Use that as a good
The
build
other
up.
thing is I'm trying to convince, and this will be a continual process basically for almost the rest of the game, is I'm convincing Portugal to help me out in West Africa because the better I can do, and help me out against in the north against Ottomans eventually, which is basically just like the more dots I get from West Africa and Abbey/Ottomans, the less I'll need to take and transfer from Portugal. I'm also starting to use like the fact that I haven't stabbed for Barotes as like a bargaining point of just like, hey, you've left Barotes empty next to me for like ever, and I haven't taken it from you, and I don't plan on taking it from you. Like you can trust me with these sorts of things. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna one dot stab. Like the only reason I took Delagoa was not because of the dot. It was because I think it's better for safety and the way the alliance is set up long term, and I'm gonna walk out of Delagoa. So. Um,
Hmm.
because even if you retake it, you can't build there that year, so it's fine. Yeah, I have Abby's doing basically zero press, and I think this phase actually starts helping Ottomans and occasionally NMRing, and this makes me very sad because I would have helped them if they stayed working with me or like stayed a vassal state, and they could have lived and done fairly well.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's all I have in terms before spring moves. Maybe I'll remember again once the moves resolve. My notes are getting a bit more sparse because we're getting out of the earlier parts.
Yeah. That's fair. Ooh.
Ah, yes, this convoy. So I actually changed up my moves in West Africa shortly before the deadline.
I knew it.
Yes, so I wanted to convoy into knots, and there was a lot of conversations around this. I wanted to convoy into knots, and I was going to support myself. I was going to convoy through Gold Coast and then support myself using Gulf of Guinea, and convoy into knots, get Mapuche support or like Dutch support or something. I don't remember. But or even I didn't even need support necessarily. I just wanted to do it, and I'd be able to do it. But I get the sense that Mapuche is going to stab me shortly before the deadline. Mapuche is very unhappy about me going to knots, and they later talk about it, even post game, as like they think that if I went to knots and I got into knots, I would solo guaranteed. I think that's ridiculous hyperbole. I actually am not too sure, even after reading some of their thoughts like post game and their breakdown. I don't think Knots. I mean, Knots obviously gives me a lot of control in West Africa, and that's a big reason why I want to be there. But I don't think it's that much more powerful than like convoying to Great Archer here, for example.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I don't think me convoying to Great Archer means guaranteed no solo. Me convoying into Knots means guaranteed solo. I also think even if I get into Corentin, Ouagadougou, etc., which is everything that Knots would give me access to, I don't necessarily solo either. I mean, I definitely don't solo. I might not even reach my impunity dots. Like even if I have Corentin and Ouagadougou, I still need to win like the Abbey home centers and the Adron home centers probably, or Portugal or something. So again, I think this is a phase where people are very much overrating my potential solo threat. I do also stab Dutch here, kind of. I think, if I remember correctly, I think this was partially negotiated. Me walking into hostile states in Benin. Um,
Kind of.
I don't.
Only a little bit.
Only a little bit. I think it was something like they had agreed to let me move through my armies through in the spring. I don't think they had realized what that actually meant they were agreeing to, which is me walking to Benin and hostile states. Or maybe they didn't. Specifically, Benin was probably the question mark because they probably wanted me to walk up into Nuri and then Oyo. But I was like, I need to be in Benin so I can like go to Great Ardra and protect it for you from England. I don't really remember. But we had to do. I did a lot of post stab press again with Dutch this phase, and it was a lot of like the rest, like England and the rest are going to try to annihilate you in Africa. Like I'm still happy for you to have stuff like Timbuktu and Ouagadougou, and like I'm going to keep pushing you west. Like I'm happy to put you into Corentin, especially after Mapuche just stabbed me. And Dutch were actually supposed to support me into Corentin here. They just didn't. Corentin. Actually, were they? No. I think why was I cutting support here? Maybe Dutch were supposed to support. Oh, Dutch were supposed to support themselves into Nantes, maybe, and blow it up. I think it was something like that, and they don't do it. Yeah, I think Dutch were supposed to support Aja down into Nantes, something like that, and I would have loved if they had. But yeah, I swapped my order set last minute because I have this convoy into Nantes with support in planned. But I think, and it's a good order set, but I think because I basically told everyone about it the phase, and I'm getting a lot of like last minute suspicious press from Mapuche, I decided to flip my order set and just go for Great Ardra instead, which funnily enough is what Mapuche had asked me to do earlier in the phase and I refused. So, and I was right. England and Mapuche had planned for the other order set, and I just get the convoy off into Great Ardra that I last minute sort of planned for. And I also have to walk into Benin. Oh, I think it was because I wanted to support myself into Great Ardra in the case the convoy failed or something. The other thing I'm doing in terms of post-stab presses here is I'm telling the Dutch the order set I'm going to do in fall, which involves me walking out of Benin. So I believe the order set I want to do is, okay, Dutch, support me into Nantes with Great Ardra. I'll walk into Nantes. I'll send Benin into Great Ardra and backfill or something like that. And it's like, if you support me into Knots, we'll blow it up. Great. We're working together. We take Cormonton, whatever. If you don't support me, then I'm just going to end up alt bouncing and I'll be in Great Ardra and Benin, and you'll actually lose a dot if you don't support me, right?
I see. And
And I think similarly,
did they agree to this convoy to Great Ardra originally?
To the Dutch?
Yeah.
I don't think so. But also they stabbed me this phase, so like,
I see.
The Dutch were supposed to support me into. I don't know actually. I don't remember. And then the other thing is similarly with hostile states. I'm like, hey Dutch, I just want support into Agadir. I'll just take support in Agadir, or I'll support you into Agadir. I don't remember. I think I want support in Agadir. Like, just support me up. I'll have another army in the front line, and I can help you. I can support hold Timbuktu and stuff. And again, it's a situation of they support me into a dot, or they lose a dot, so they'll probably want to do it. Some other interesting decisions. I'm rotating in to start doing more stuff with the Abbey front. I'm also stabbing Adron for the second time / fully here.
Yeah, with Portugal.
With Portugal.
Yeah, getting into Hobia.
This was maybe a mistake. I just didn't want to stab Portugal here because I was working with them so closely, and I decided to just go for the home centers. I was very much considering my previous deal where I just like work with Adron from here on, and then like work against Portugal and stuff. But if you scroll down, I think Adran already was starting to do weird stuff here. Yeah, is that Adran tapping Cape Go? What is Adran doing there?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, that's Adran tapping Cape Co. Yeah, I forget what exactly it was, but I think Adran was already getting like
maybe they were gonna get
weird
support
vibes in
from
press or something. Yeah, I think I was already getting weird vibes in press from Adran and like some indications that Adran was going to fight me, which is really sad because this is like the one time I was finally willing to turn and like attack Portugal here and like potentially work with Adran if they were willing to do the deal I previously had suggested of like become an INO regional. And they stabbed me at the one time when I was willing to pivot. Although I don't end up doing it anyway, I guess I just kill them. But again, even if I had taken their home centers, I could have still worked with them after that point if they were open to something like that. Obviously, that's like a very flexible approach, and a lot of diplomacy players aren't necessarily that flexible. But like, I would have just started eating Portugal's home centers potentially, and then they can just take like Madagascar and stuff with my help. But instead, they try to go against me, I guess. But also, they're already fighting everyone else around them, so I don't know.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
Yeah. Also, like, yeah, they are trying to work with Portugal here because they're also walking out of Muscat, you can see, which I think they also get stabbed for. So Portugal just hits them really hard.
Why does Bemba hold? So you could have
I'm
an
just
army
holding
there?
so it can walk into Barotes if I want to. I think it's basically like, hey, I'm moving everything north, but like Bemba will stay where it is, and like if you stab me or something, I'm just gonna walk into Barotes. So I'm just keeping it there because Portugal's given me permission to, and I'm not gonna walk out of Bemba if I don't have to.
Makes sense.
And it's also there to prevent them from ever building an army in Moravia, is the thing. Because it's like, I don't really need to send it north unless I'm full committing away from them, but I don't really want to because if they put down armies in Moravia and stuff, I want to be able to punish that a bit. So it's literally like a garrisoned unit that looks like it's in an aggressive position, but and it kind of is, but it's also just a visual representation of how much leverage I have over Portugal. That's the expected garrison point.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they can't really say much about it because they've offered me Barotes, so just the fact that I'm holding off and taking Barotes is already fairly generous.
There is a bit of an issue here. There is
Yeah.
2 Mapuche fleets.
Yeah, so Mapuche stabs me here for balance of power reasons. I'm sad because I had just supported them into a dot and I've been so friendly to them. I convoyed them over and everything. And I don't think I'm a solo threat. They think I'm a solo threat. I'm trying my best to convince them I'm not a solo threat. Sometimes it's really hard to do that when someone thinks you're a solo threat because they just think that everything you're saying is to help you solo. But it's like, nope. And even post game, I mean, I don't think I was a solo threat in this position, pretty clearly. But I was the top board, so there's that.
Yeah, I think it's technically too soon. Like,
Yeah,
it's so far away
I'm 16
still.
dots away. Yeah, it's not.
Yeah, I think it's too early to call.
Yeah, and also because of the 35% band, which I don't think you actually played an Imperial Diplomacy game with that.
No, not yet.
Mission. It's brutal. Like the
I
bar for
imagine.
saying someone's a solo threat, especially a 4 center regional. For reference, 35% of the VSCC, I believe, is 10 dots. So if you want to solo against someone, and if you're already the top board, and you want to solo, you would, and you're around the same level as someone who's in second place, you would need to get the number of dots. You need to go plus 10 just to make the 35% gap, and then you need to get the number of dots equal to around how many they're getting that year. So if England's going like plus 7 that year, you would need to go, however many. I think the total was I would need to go plus 14. That comes from back for when that number was. So I'd have to say plus 14 just to stay on solo pace.
Which is a stupidly large amount.
Yeah, and yeah, me going plus 14 here is not happening. And especially not me going plus 14 in a sustainable way that would be continual in future years. Because like when we've been talking about all these like stabs where I end the year with like a plus 11 or something, it's basically by stabbing everyone around me and like ending up in a terrible position for next year where I'm just gonna lose a lot of it. Like if I take Maristad and stuff, I'm just gonna lose it next year. So it's not actual sustainable. I'm gonna hit that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think I'm a solo threat in this position, and I think it's a bit early to stab because I think as my position continues to get better, you'll have better opportunities to do this in the future. I also think it's bad for Mapuche because I would have helped Mapuche a lot here. I'm happy with Mapuche taking more dots in this region away from the colonials. And this is decelerating their own growth by doing this. And we talk about this more later in the game, but Mapuche ends up also eventually agreeing with some parts of this assessment, at least that this was a bad step to go for and it was too early, that they should have gotten more out of this region.
Yeah. This is very interesting.
Because with them stopping here and support holding nonce, they're basically agreeing that they're never going to get more than this 1 dot here, or like not very realistically for a very long time.
Yeah. So I think officially this is all new. I don't remember ever seeing this convoy. Like I remember getting Fernando Po, but I think that
we're
was
still in the 4th year, so yeah, this is still pretty early on.
It is very, very interesting.
Yep.
I did not realize you stab the Dutch like that.
Yeah. Cool. I'm also support holding Cape Co, just doing basic stuff. It's all fine.
Yeah, taking Mpondo seems really painful from here.
I think part of this was Adron was maybe asking me to support them into Mpondo, and I refused. They're probably asking they're probably asking Portugal for support into Cape Co, and Portugal said no, screw you. So.
That's probably it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably what it was.
Tried to peace out with.
That would be a pretty bad deal for Portugal too, because Portugal would also have to use Mozambique to tap Delagoa, and that's just a nightmare. They offered France Sokolava and then wanted France to turn on Portugal, but then France refused. So, yeah, Adron's just not in a great spot.
Honestly, pretty impressive that France still has all of Madagascar.
Yeah, with their 2 fleets and 0 build potential, yeah.
Like it's not like.
I mean, they only
France
have it because
diplomacy may
Adron
not
supported
be
them.
the greatest, perhaps, but their ability to. It's Seneca. Their ability to defend is been quite.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Good.
I think it's impressive how long they stay on for how bad it seemed like their position was going to be in the first year.
What is this? England supports Inuit to Anticosti, but they're also tapping Anticosti. Why?
There's no reason. It's I don't think anyway. Like I can't actually maybe no actually there's some like reasons, right? Like if France supports Nascapi into them, it screws with that. So there is actually a tactical reason to do that. Yeah, if Anticosti supports Nascapi into Strait of Belle Isle, covers for that.
Yeah.
So it could. There are reasons that it could not be a misorder, but it does look kind of like a misorder.
It does, yeah.
I don't know if it was intentional or not.
Oh.
I do know, like, when you're playing colonial, like, it's not that surprising to make misorders like that, so it could be either way. Oh yeah, Spain is in both of Portugal's home centers, I think, or capital centers.
Yeah.
Yep, Lisbon and Porto, I think.
No,
actually,
no. They don't get
Porto. Just Porto. Yeah. But yeah, what a mess.
Yeah, this looks like a nightmare. Actual headache.
And yet, it's still probably the 3rd best region. India's even worse.
Yeah, Migos gets Hyderabad.
Migos gets Hyderabad. Woo!
All right, we want to move on to the next phase.
Yep, we can go ahead.
All right. Retreat. Ooh, there's a lot of options. Did you ask Adron of anything here?
I did. At this point, I think they're pretty absentee, but I asked them to go to like Mascarini, I think was the best. I suggest they go there.
Yeah.
Or Marina or something like that. I'm like, anything like that looks kind of good. Probably Mascarini. Yeah. I don't know what they do. Actually, I think I do know what they do. And it does not make me very happy.
I think I know what they do too. Yep.
What happened to you? Haven't seen anything.
Well, I've seen something very later on.
Yeah. So they do the one thing that's like remotely anti-Congo here, which is they go to Southern Sea, and I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, Adron, you're just trying to all-in me at this point.
There's something
like the least subtle and least effective trying to declare the war intentions against me.
Yeah.
They really are begging Portugal to support me and support them into Cape Co here.
Yeah.
Which would be, it's such a weird retreat too, because at this point Portugal's not in Mapondo. So if they were to support into Cape Co, I would just retreat into Mapondo, so there's no reason for them to ever support Audron into Cape Co.
Yeah.
Because they just lose it a lot.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't even go down. It'd just be Audron takes it off from Portugal. Yeah, Abbey's dying to Ottomans despite previously having the upper hand. Sad. That's part of why I moved to Sennar. I forgot to mention that. I moved to Sennar because I'm like, oh, Abbey's just dying here. I had to deal with Ottomans as well this phase. That Ottomans officially stabs me, I believe. I had to deal with them. I forget what the exact deal was, but basically they were supposed to give me Gondor. Their split of Abbey was I get Gondor and Darfur, and they get everything else, which I already wasn't happy with, but I just kind of agreed to because whatever. They didn't seem like they were going to do anything else. And even then, I think they still stabbed me because they didn't want me to have Gondor. I was like, damn, okay. I forget what exactly, but something about the order set here was wrong.
Yeah.
Oh, but the other cool thing about me moving to Sonar is I can build in Darfur.
Yes, I was about to ask, like, how would I handle this here? Because
And I also think I got enough builds to build there. Oh, no, actually, we're not in fall yet. We have not done fall moves. Never mind.
I don't think I would do a self bounce in Darfur here. I just move Azande to Dinka. Or
Yeah, I have a bunch of choices. You're saying you just ignore Darfur and hope that Ottomans doesn't go for it?
Yeah.
It's definitely an option. I don't love that option.
I just feel like self
the other thing
bouncing
is,
sucks.
well, the other thing is, not only do you lose a dot from Darfur, that's like fine, whatever. Something that I think I do pretty well this game is, and I have enough units to spare to do this, but like whenever you can, I really like doing this, which is I don't allow any rogue units. Basically, this entire game, as we go on, I'm basically not having to struggle with any rogue units, and it's because I have very safe, secured borders like this. Where, spoiler, I think I'm going to take a very defensive approach to Darfur because I don't want to deal with an Ottoman army getting in there, and then what if they retreat into wherever, Lagone, etc. Like that just looks like a nightmare, and you can kind of never get rid of that army unless you use like 5 units or whatever. So I can maintain these like very strong fronts everywhere because I'm not having to dedicate 5 units to blowing up some random rogue unit. But it does mean I have to play a bit passively sometimes.
Audron did have 2 little sneaky behind retreats when you were
Yes, I actually
piffing
do allow a
armies.
couple of them. You're right. They just never end up getting taken.
Yeah. It never
But this is a
happens.
case where
Yeah.
I don't want to allow it.
That makes
So I would not be
sense.
surprised if I self-bound Starfur here. I certainly would be highly considering that order set.
I mean, you don't need to take Gondor, which would be the reason to not self bounce.
No, and I don't even want to take a dot off of Abyssinia, really.
Yeah, because
Also, I think I have
like
enough dots to
yeah,
get
that's
5.
what I was saying. So you got 1, 2, 3, 3 there.
Well, I'm not taking all 3 of those. I'm walking out of one of them.
4.
Because I'm pro-Dutch, remember?
I don't believe you. For some reason.
Hey, I'm telling the Dutch my full order set in West Africa, and that is the order set I'm inputting.
Oh, you're probably losing St. Helena though, because of the
Am I?
or Cape Co. One of the
Maybe.
two. Because actually, you could probably lose both. Maybe.
Yes, this is very possible. I'm trying to talk Mapuche out of going for St. Helena, while also recognizing there's kind of nothing I can do about it. But it's also just like, hey Mapuche, do you really want to go to war over St. Helena? Like, I'll just bring 3 fleets to it. You'll bring 2 to 3 fleets to it. We're gonna bounce and take it back from each other over and over ad infinitum.
I think I know
Is
what
this really what you want?
happens.
I hate when that happens. It sucks for both people. And Mapuche player is a good player, so I think I managed to convince him out of doing it.
What I said is I think I know what happens here.
Oh, you think you know what happens? Yeah.
Yes, I think I know.
Yeah.
Do we want to move to the next turn?
We can, yeah. I don't think there's anything super crazy in the press here.
Oh no, never mind. This goes all the way to.
Yeah, so they don't tell me this convoy happens. They get really annoyed at me for trying to
Dislodging?
dislodge their convoy. It doesn't succeed.
Okay.
But I didn't even know they were convoying.
Oh, they did.
Portugal forces it. Yep, look at that.
Wait, what? Oh, Portugal's fighting you. Why? Why?
Kind of. Portugal
Why?
just supports the Cape Co thing and does everything else pro me. I have no idea why they did this.
Why?
I was joking earlier about why would you ever do this? Because I can just retreat to Mapondo. I can in fact just retreat to Mapondo. And it's just a transfer of a build from Portugal to Ajuran. They of course asked me not to retreat to Mapondo, and I was like, well, could you have not supported Ajuran into Cape Co in the first place? I would have liked that. So I of course do in fact retreat to Mapondo.
Yeah, that's weird. Why though? Did you
Even cover Moravi? So like, if I had taken this badly, they can't follow up stab me
But
either.
didn't you say that you were good pals with Portugal? What?
Yeah, and
What
actually,
happened?
the rest of the moves they do in the north are all the moves I asked them to. Like, I asked them to cover Moravi because I don't want them building an army there. I asked them to support into Zanzibar. I ask Audron to support hold Zanzibar, but I also know that Audron's probably going to stab me at this point, and Audron does stab me. Not that really that yeah, I mean, whatever.
I mean,
At this point, who cares?
You stabbed them.
True, I did stab them, but also whatever. I asked them to support hold Zanzibar, and they did not. They chose between Zanzibar and Beto, basically, and they chose Portugal.
The impressive defense by the French. What happens here?
I do the exact orders that I tell the Dutch I'm going to do, where I am going to walk out of one of their centers, and then they stab me in such a way that prevents me from walking out of one of their centers.
That's odd. Actually, both that you were supposed to be walking out of.
I do get into Agadir, but not because they support me, I think, but because maybe they do support me, but because England.
Yeah. Wait, you just what is that support? That's not.
It doesn't look like it's supporting me because it's not connected.
It looks like it's supporting House of States to Timbuktu.
Yeah, or some other misorder. But they try to support knots into Great Ardra, which is really funny to me. Because I literally would have walked out of one of their dots, and they're supporting someone else.
Yeah, I thought that you were going to go to knots. I thought that's what the plan was, to force disband.
England also stabs Mapuche here.
So
this was not arranged.
I feel like this wasn't like Mapuche just took that center, or no, they were working together for a second there.
Yeah, they were working together last phase. So England stabs.
But England did get screwed by them alongside you.
What did England get screwed by?
By you supporting them into Cormonton.
Oh yes. Sure.
Poland's doing pretty well in West Africa here. It's a bounce.
They're like that's I think a ranged bounce, and they're working with Portugal at this point because Portugal's not taking Mali. Actually, Portugal's position is way better than Portugal's position is amazing here. They're just not going to act on it. They could take Mali here if they wanted to.
Imagine this is when you stop giving Portugal advice.
Oh no, I was giving Portugal advice every phase. It's just whether or not they took it.
No. Like now that they've stabbed you.
Oh yeah. No, I'm still giving Portugal advice on what things to do. See. Yeah. In fact, they'll stab me much harder than this. I mean, they're still kind of pretty happy with me. It gets worse, sadly. It gets worse before it gets better.
Interesting. So
Guarani
is in.
Yeah, Guarani's coming for me, and I'm like, crap, the SAO triple is coming for me, despite how nice I was to them. But Guarani's also convoying into the Dutch, so maybe it's okay. Poland's coming.
Oh,
I was asking so at this point I'm trying to get the SAO triple to like bounce England and Poland, and like because I'm still very scared of this England-Poland duo threat, especially with people starting to evaluate me as the higher threat. Like they're going to take over Caribbean. They're already supporting themselves down into Guyana Current. England's already in Cayenne and already taking South America centers, and they're coming down into the South Atlantic Ocean. My fears are becoming real. They're going to dump 50 fleets on us and kill all three of us, and I'm ringing the alarm bells to the South America triple. The only hope here is that the Dutch is still fighting England in the Caribbean. The Dutch is just helping in West Africa, and the Dutch tells me, and we have like a conversation about this, where the Dutch is like, "Yeah, I actually like you, Kongo Dutch." Dutch says, and like you've been good to me, and like you haven't like lied to me or stabbed me, but I'm being told that you're a solo threat, and I don't want the game to end too early for the other people on the board. And I was like, okay, that's understandable, but I'm also not a solo threat, and here's why.
But you're also not been nice to them, and here's why.
It is true that I have not lied to them that much.
That is the only true statement.
I think it is true that I am the nicest to them of literally every other power in the West Africa. I think that is a true statement.
I mean, you haven't been mean to Poland.
Poland's been killing them in Caribbean and stuff. Then it is attached heavily.
Oh, nicest to the Dutch. I see.
Yeah, I've been the nicest to Dutch of all the countries
I
in West
thought
Africa.
it was like the Dutch, like the nicest of West Africa that you've been to. I see.
No. I've been the nicest to the Dutch of the countries in West Africa.
Yeah.
At this point, the Dutch are getting like full-fledged coalition across the board. So someone who is actively trying to walk out of their centers, like Great Adra to Adra, is pretty rare.
I thought you didn't want to leave Bemba.
I did not, but I was convinced of Portugal's great loyalty. Great loyalty. Cape Co. Great loyalty. And I decided to walk out because it would help against Bido and stuff, which was probably a mistake. I should not have done that. Oh well.
Yeah. But you colored in Kismayo. That'll be important later, I bet.
I don't know if it was, sadly.
No? Doesn't
There's also
justify
some
it
interesting high seas tactics. I was helping Netherlands with like a lot of their random tactics around INO, for example. Like I was helping them with their, I was helping them with some of this, like this year and next year. It's just kind of interesting.
The Maldives. That's cool.
I think more so next year. But yeah.
Damn, this IATI is huge.
Yeah, it's doing great.
Not all of Borneo?
I mean, they did just get stabbed, so.
Yeah, they did. That's not great.
In fact, I think they're disbanding this year, actually.
Ooh, yeah, wait, never mind. They were doing good.
Yeah.
But they still could come back, I believe.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Let me look at the like retreats map here. Oh. You have retreat. You have a retreat.
Yeah.
I imagine it's in Pondo.
Yeah, it's so fun. There's a really interesting gimmick about that, though, is if you look at the leaderboard, England actually passes me until I retreat into Mapondo.
You should not have retreated in Pondo.
No, so there's this is pretty easy decision, honestly, which is that Portugal just stabbed me. But the other thing is, I'm +4 here. And I actually have 5 places to build. And if I'm looking at my builds here, I kind of want the 2 fleets because of all this naval war that's about to happen. And look at that SAO situation.
That's so scary.
I want an army in Darfur because I'm able to put an army in Darfur, and that looks amazing right now, either for the Dutch or for Ottoman stuff.
You want the 2 armies for Portugal.
Ironically, if Portugal had not stabbed me, I actually don't feel the need for the 4th build. But because Portugal stabbed me, I feel like I want to put an army in Mpemba or Pengo to deal with potential threats to Portugal.
Yeah.
Especially because I already sent the other army up to Kismayo, so I need a new Bemba army.
Yeah, I would not trust Portugal after that. That's for sure.
Which is so sad because I had basically full faith in them.
I have to say, your borders got really ugly all of a sudden.
Just because Cape Co, or?
Because, like, all this as well. Like,
Yeah, I guess so.
It's not very clean.
Part of it's because I walked through, like, House of States, but it's not recolored or whatever.
Yeah.
And I don't think I'm basically never going to cover in some of those things because, like, why would I?
But map painting, you have to do it.
Like, I don't basically ever have a reason to walk into, like, Nri, for example.
Yeah.
Anyway. Yeah, I think those are just my winter builds. My build requests are basically the same out of everyone every year now. Like, Portugal, never build armies, please. Adron, you're not building, so whatever. Disband armies. I don't even know if you have armies left. Oh, you don't. Oh, Portugal destroyed your last army, so Adron officially has no armies. So at least there's that. Progressing towards the no non-purple hexagons.
Yeah. Oh, Mapuche got Ogaduga. I didn't notice that.
Yep. I'm gonna want to take Garmentine next year, but that shouldn't be too hard.
And
trying to get the Dutch back on my side. Part of that also is I'm suggesting disbands and like builds for Dutch and Portugal each year. And it's one of those things where sometimes even if even if I don't care too much about what the actual content of the thing is, although in some cases I do, just the fact that I can get, they can agree on something with me, like, hey, I'm going to disband, like, I don't know, INO5 and INO4 or something. And then seeing them say that to me during winter and then actually follow through with it does a lot for me personally to build trust. So I guess that's a tip if you want to ally me in games, is tell me things and actually do them.
You're
Um,
advertising for.
yeah. Tell me things and then actually do them.
Guys,
It just
here's
does a
how to
lot, even if
ally
it's like
me.
kind of meaningless. No, I'm saying if you want to ally me, you can stab me if you want to. Although the only rule is if you're gonna stab me, you should solo. Anyway,
Mhm.
um,
What if I stab you and then impunity with you?
that's also okay. You're just not allowed to stab me and then lose the game. That's not allowed.
We should look at the
Okay.
moves here, and then I think
Yeah.
we're pretty close to running out of time. So
Yep. What are we? We're at winter. Is this the fourth winter? I think so.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I built exactly what I thought I built. Um, Dutch disbands Aja. Did I want that to happen? I probably wanted that to happen.
yeah, I think so, right?
Yeah.
Seems better than.
I wanted them to keep the other ones on. And they disband something else elsewhere. Abyssinia does more really bad disbands, I think. Or at least ones I'm not happy about.
Yeah, the offensive units.
Ottomans putting down an army in Mecca makes me very unhappy because that's going to get convoyed over and it's basically a 5th Africa army. Very not happy about that, especially because Ottoman basically did zero press with me about it, even though I asked them not to. Safs is continuing to go fully anti-Ottomans. What else is going on here? Mughals is doing really well. We haven't really been paying too much attention to that, but
Oh, yeah, they got. I mean, we mentioned they got Hyderabad, but
yeah.
they did get Herat.
If you look at the leaderboard, I think they're probably jumping up at this point.
Oh, yeah, you're
Yeah.
first still.
We always see a lot of like the strong contending positions. Mapuche and Guarani are also doing really well, which makes me a bit scared just because, yeah. I mean, I like them, but yeah, they're not being very nice to me right now. And look at that, England and Poland, second and third. Spooky.
Yeah, killed Sweden.
Yep. And look, so many builds down. Yeah. England is basically they're basically unopposed in Caribbean and North America now. If you look at NA, North America is about to completely change. Look at that.
Yeah,
Like France is just screwed at this point. They're pulling builds as well, so no longer will they be holding off. And
the
England's in an
fact
amazing
that
spot.
Inuit is working with England here makes things a little bit difficult.
Yeah, we don't suspect that to continue for much longer. Although building the army there, I think, was kind of wild instead of a fleet for Inuit. Because
Yeah,
especially if you know what France is disbanding, but you probably don't. But still, like Anticosti and stuff. Like, of course England's going to go for that. You're so deep into where they are. Uh,
yeah.
yeah.
Caribbean's as beautiful as always.
Oh, so I do convince. Yeah, so I definitely talked to the Dutch into these disbands. If you look at Kalina and stuff, I wanted them to disband in South America here because the hope was to create tension between the South America regionals and, well, first of all, it's just good for Dutch. Like these are all bad units to keep on, but also create tension between South America regionals and England and Poland as soon as possible. Because I knew if you create this much of an opening, um, England will want to go on to like Kalina and Bellum as well as Aymara and Guarani.
Yeah,
So strategically disbanding to create space in a place that will
that
open up
is
conflict between them.
that is very smart.
Because I want the South Atlantic cooperation to cease sooner than later.
Also, just having them fight someone that isn't you.
Well, exactly. But also it's very important because of the South Atlantic Ocean stuff.
Yeah,
And it's very important for me that I'm not getting four-way attacked by Guarani, Mapuche, England, and Poland.
it's a lot of fleets. My goodness.
Yep. And they told me they were doing it. So at least there's that. But yeah, I was not happy. I mean, because Guarani is basically becoming a naval power now. So,
A naval power with two allies behind them. That's scary.
exactly. So they basically have to go into me or something else, but I'm trying my best not to make it me.
Yeah.
France also disbands all of Madagascar. I knew this
Ah,
was coming.
that's sad.
Uh, is that Portugal disbanding in Reunion? That's a weird
Yeah,
one. Huh. That's weird.
Because they thought the Dutch was going to be able to take it.
Or they thought the Dutch was coming back on side or something.
The Dutch
I don't
has,
know.
or Portugal just managed here. This is,
Yeah, I guess they just like giving up on fronts entirely, I guess.
yeah, looks
Yeah,
like
I also told the Dutch to
Mapuche
disband these
Ayutthaya.
in Oceania. So the way that the Dutch is disbanding here in Oceania is pro Ayutthaya and anti Mapuche, because I didn't want Mapuche snowballing and taking more builds here because of my problems in South America and the SAO region. So I
Yeah.
wanted the Dutch to basically vassalize to Ayutthaya in Oceania, especially because I had a good relationship with Ayutthaya and stuff.
Makes sense.
And them doing well is good for me, especially because it looked like they were going to get into conflict with Mapuche.
See Ajran's in Silent.
Yeah, Ajran stabbed 3 people
Oh,
for 3
and
minerals here.
Ben
Yep.
Geshem.
They stabbed Keshem, they stabbed Cylon, and then and they stabbed me for Kipko. And I think those are like, yeah.
I mean, they're doing that little fun thing that you were talking about, just grabbing whatever, whatever they
Well, I mean,
can.
I was thinking they'd actually have like I was hoping, like my dream for this Ajran, which I think was actually somewhat achievable, was they took over Madagascar, they cored like Fort Dauphin or something, and then they just became like a new power named Madagascar. That was kind of what I was thinking. Um, like they take over Reunion and Maldives, and they just have like 5 fleets in the Indian Ocean or something. Like that was kind of the vision,
I see.
but it was not to come.
Dang.
Cool. Yeah. Do you want to keep going, or do we want to end for here
I
for
think
now?
I think I'm down to end. Here.
Yeah, I think so too. So we got through 4 years, which is about the halfway point what we were thinking. And not necessarily for the game itself, but just because, yeah, this is a good spot to end this one.
Yeah. So thank you guys for watching. Part
Yeah, thank
2,
you.
the
If you made it this
finale.
far, comment something interesting that you liked or something you wanted to know more about in the game.
Yeah, we'll probably
Um,
answer some questions in the video, I think.
yeah, and we could potentially even address it in the next video depending on when we record it.
Yeah.
Um, Also, the Discord server where the game is played is accessible and open, and you can view literally every message sent in that game, as well as like some of the void notes I'm referring to, and yeah, much more than we covered here, because obviously there's so much on this map.
Yeah. And I think the link to the Imperial Diplomacy Discord server will be down there as well. So if you want to
Yeah,
play a game of this yourself,
yes,
they
they have
do
signups
they do
basically
waves
monthly.
of these, like waves of games, like what 12 or something every few months.
Yeah, it's honestly pretty wild.
It's
They're getting hundreds of players to
it's
sort into games
it's super
every month or so.
massive,
Yeah.
but it's super fun. Recommend it.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you for watching.
Thank you for watching.